recorded live from Studio 12A in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. You're listening to the Josh and Friends Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Josh and Friends Podcast. I am your host. My name is Josh. And this week, we are here once again to discuss the Beatles. The question today, though, is which member had the best overall solo album of the 70s? Well, that's what we're here to find out. So join us as we discuss the top solo discographies from the greatest band of all time. And find out which member of the Fab Four took that number one spot. So joining me in today's discussion is my favorite Beatlemaniac and someone that goes back with me decades listening to the Beatles as well as their solo work. Please give me a warm welcome to the one and only Mr. John Rajcich. All right! Woo! Johnny! Welcome back, buddy. How you doing, man?
Doing good, my man. Excited.
Here we are. So you ready for this?
Yeah, considering I thought it was last Saturday and I had an extra week, I'm pretty was pretty fortunate there. I know I gave you a little bit of scare when I'm like, hey, you ready?
Yeah, you're like, you ready to do this? I'm like, no, I'm kind of not ready.
I can wing it, I guess.
Yeah, no.
I was more like,
this took a lot of prep.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Serious business.
Yeah, so what we're planning on doing here is we're going to be going over a selection of some of the top-rated solo Beatles albums, and I'm going to note some quick stats, like along the way, in some of the key tracks, and then we could give our review of the album. Now, we're also going to go over, some of our favorite deep cuts and some interesting facts, and then give our overall grade for each album. And then at the end, as always, then we'll present our top three personal favorite picks with a runner-up. And that's the part that always stresses me out. Because like you said, I think you said this, that it, changes like every day or every week.
Uh-huh. I literally shuffled my top three like 3 times today.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I'm good now.
Oh, good. Okay. All
We'll
right. Yeah. I think I'm not good still, but whatever. We could do another one of these sometime down the road and it'll be different. But so just to explain a little bit about the process that we're going to do here. So we've decided to focus on the studio albums, primarily featured, original music by each artist. So we've cut out like the live albums, the cover albums, the lowest selling albums. We have some lowest selling albums that listed on here, and generally the worst reviewed albums. So one album that we did decide to cut out was Wings at the Speed of Sound, which you noted that had 2 huge hits on it, which was Silly Love Songs and Let 'Em In. And I think that one was cut. I think we cut that because that's one of those albums where they had like, each member did a couple songs on the album. So it's not full Paul McCartney. It's not full strength Paul McCartney on there. So yeah. So we kind of like, we kind of like X that one out. I mean, we could talk about it now if you'd like to, but I mean, there's some good songs on it. Like there's some good songs on, pretty much all of these, but another cool thing that we decided to do is create our own selections for the Black Album. And you're probably asking yourself, what is the Black Album? I have no idea what he's talking about. Well, this was an idea originally created by Ethan Hawke. You remember Ethan Hawke from back in the day? What was he most famous for? That Training Day movie? Yeah. The young cop or whatever. What is he? What else is he in?
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I don't know, dude.
Anyway, he was in that movie Boyhood, and the Black Album was featured in that movie from 2014.
And what it is the best of John, Paul, George, and Ringo solo post-breakup.
When you ever listen to too much of the solo stuff, it kind of becomes a drag,
But you put them next to each other, right? And then you can hear it. It's the Beatles.
I think he nails it there because that's what makes the Beatles so good. Is like, you got like kind of like the sad songs by the sad, depressing songs by Lennon, and then you have like the weird Paul McCartney songs. Then you have like the I'm Ringo, I'm on a submarine, and then like George doing his spiritual stuff. So it like all works together, but kind of like on its own, it's like okay, like yeah. So we decided to make our own Black album, and we put our songs together, which was another stressful moment for me.
It was a very fun project. I was really excited when you brought it up. I hopped right on it. I think I put off doing anything else before I did that, even though it wasn't a main part of the show.
Right. Yeah. So we're probably going to just put that in the notes. And if you want to check it out, definitely check it out and see what you think and maybe come up with your own list. All right. So we're just going to get right into this, man. So because we got a lot of coverage to go over here.
Heck yeah.
Got a lot of
Let's
albums.
dip our toes in.
All right. So first up, Paul McCartney releases McCartney in 1970, and it was released April 17th of 1970, which was 3 weeks before the final Beatles album, Let It Be, was released. So John Lennon had actually walked away from the band in September of 69, and McCartney recorded pretty much the entire album by himself, which is a famous story now, where he like overdubbed on one of those 4-track tape recorders, and it's basically become pretty legendary because it was the first rock album or rock artist to do that. Since then it's been done a lot, like Phil Collins, Trent Reznor, Dave Grohl, Prince.
It's easy now.
Right, especially now, with all that. I mean, you can do it in your home, like with just a computer and some Pro Tools and stuff like that.
I'll be dropping my new album next month.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So the key tracks on that one, I don't think there's any like big singles on that one, but Maybe I'm Amazed is the big song on that album. Never released as a single, but this album was originally not received very well by critics at the time of its release. Most of the reviews rip on it for being underproduced and many of the songs feeling incomplete. So Johnny, what are your thoughts on this album?
It was underproduced and a lot of the songs were incomplete.
It's accurate. It is accurate.
It's true. I mean, majority of the songs feel like demos, or aside from, a few songs like Every Night, Junk, and Maybe I'm Amazed, sounds like, Let It Be type of song.
Yeah.
Standard Paul staple.
Yeah, and you could actually hear like in that Let It Be documentary, you could hear some of like these songs that going on here.
That was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but that's kind of like the charm of it. It's like, just him kind of, fooling around, kind of doing his own thing. But yeah, Every Night, and I think Every Night is probably the song that sounds like it would be like a single, like next to Maybe I'm Amazed. And Junk, like Junk's like a great song that is played now too. Mm-hmm. But I always like the song "Ooh You." That was a good one.
Me too, man.
Yeah,
that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you give this album as far as a grade?
So just because I don't know, this was a really good album, and I felt it would have been so much better with more production, just because that's kind of Paul's thing. He doesn't do lo-fi as good as some of the other Beatles. And it was kind of a dick move that he just went and like scurried off to a studio and recorded it in secret, and then bam, he dropped it. He's like, take this, guys. So dropped my own solo album. Yeah. But I don't know. He said it was supposed to be lo-fi, but I think he was just bullshitting us, because that's what a lot of artists do after the fact. They're like, "Oh, no, I meant it for it to be lo-fi." Yeah.
He's such a perfectionist too. Yeah, you're right.
I know.
Higher quality.
I think that's what's most interesting, though, is that he did put an album that wasn't perfected, and so this definitely points to him for that, for putting something out totally different from what he would normally do, because that's kind of one of the things that drove the Beatles apart. Was he was the perfectionist, and the other guys were like, let's just do this for fun now, we're kind of over it.
Yeah.
But I'd say for my rating, I'd go 7 out of 10 Teddy Boys.
Oh, look at this guy over here. Look at this guy. No, I actually had 7
Yeah.
out of 10.
I loved a lot of the songs.
Yeah.
And yeah, Ooh You, definitely my favorite song. The guitars and the bass, they just rock. And it's just really cool, even though it's that underproduced, it just sounds really good. It's like a garage rock song. And then he's got that gotta cuckoo. I love that part.
You and I used to listen to like a lot of these like solo albums, like because like you get sick of the Beatles, because like we would play the hell out of the Beatles, and we're like, all right, well maybe we should just move on to like the 70s. So
yeah, I remember
a lot.
You started to get me into the solo stuff, and you're telling me all these albums, and I was like, whoa, wow, there's a lot out there. I mean, I knew about the Lennon and stuff because I was really into Lennon at the time, but a lot of the early Paul stuff I hadn't heard, and so we would go to the mall and do the listen to all the albums and decide if we wanted to buy it, and then I remember buying Ram, McCartney right off the bat, and Ram. Yeah, really good stuff.
Well, let's move on to so we both give that one a 7 out of 10. The next one on the list here is George Harrison's All Things Must Pass, released on November 27th, 1970. Definitely the most grand of all the solo Beatles albums in collaboration, in length, in praise. The producer on this one was your and I's favorite, Phil Spector. And key tracks on this one are My Sweet Lord and What Is Life. And this was Rock's first triple album by a single artist. There was like, I think Woodstock had the first triple Rock album. But a lot of the album consisted of songs that were rejected by the Beatles previously, going back to as far as 1966. So this sucker was... Wow. He had a lot of songs built up in his repertoire, and Harrison actually said, this is one of the greatest quotes ever. Harrison said, he goes, I didn't have many tunes on the Beatles records, so doing an album like All Things Must Pass was kind of like going to the bathroom and letting it all out. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's a nice metaphor. Yeah, no, I mean this one had an all-star cast of musicians, included Eric Clapton, Ringo Starr, Gary Wright, Billy Preston, Klaus Voormann, and Badfinger. So I mean, this album, it was a huge album, huge success. John, what are your thoughts on All Things Must Pass?
So I was definitely going to touch on the Wall of Sound, Phil Spector. I cannot stand that muddied, just like everything mixed together like a musical smoothie, and you can't hear like the leads and stuff. Yeah, it just kind of get washed out. But I read that Phil Spector wouldn't start working until he was like totally hammered. And then one time he fell and broke his arm on the like mixing board because he was so drunk.
Wow,
that dude's a nutball, dude.
Yeah, he was.
And I mean, this album was amazing, and for me, it was hard to get over that sound of Spector's and the overproduction, and I feel like it should have been cut down in half, and it would have been so much better. That like one whole side of an album was like instrumental jam songs, something about
Apple Jam,
John Lennon's birthday, and pepperoni or something that.
No, that album, George Harrison said when they were remixing the 30th anniversary or something like that, they're like, what are your thoughts on this album? And he's like, Phil Spector used too much echo. And I'm like, there's a lot of too much stuff on that. Yeah, no, you're right. I think it could have been cut down, especially that third like record of jams and stuff like that. It's like, okay, it's like, they're fine, but it's like, you don't need that. Like, and I think that what makes up for the album is the songs are so good, right? Like you can't get away from like how good the songs are, So, right. I mean, if you have a choice of picking out so many songs and then you're able to still make a triple album with the songs that you picked out, that's pretty crazy. So, What are your deep cuts for this album here?
Well, I mean, I guess it's not the deep cut because it's the best song is My Sweet Lord, but I really liked Run of the Mill. Apple Scruffs was fun.
Yeah.
Art of Dying was really cool.
I always love that song.
I remember when we first heard that, we were camping and we played it on a CD player in my parents' camper in Natchez somewhere near Yakima or some crap. And we're like, whoa, this is awesome.
Yeah, because it sounds
as we're draining the battery of the camper.
Right. Yeah. Right. I remember listening to that song too, because it was it sounds almost like a kind of like a cop chase, like video or something like that. You're like, what is this? This doesn't even sound like anything else on the album.
It was wild.
Yeah. And then did you see the documentary that Colin Hanks did? Tower Records. Yeah. All Things Must Pass. Did you see that? And they closed it out with that song, and I was like, oh, just chills. It's such a good song. And
that sounds awesome.
Yeah. And it was such a perfect song too, because all things must pass. Right. And
there's something that's really cool that I was reading, and apparently Lennon and Yoko visited George during the sessions, and when they showed up, George was just really cold to him and was not super excited and was just kind of blowing him off. But Lennon listened to a few of his tracks and told him how amazing they were and how much he loved them. And it just George was so satisfied, I'm sure. And he totally his mood changed instantly to realize he's finally got this validation from someone he's been trying to the leader of the band he was in for a decade that wasn't giving him a chance, and suddenly he's like, oh damn, you are good. Sorry.
It's tough because that was Paul and John's band, it was. And then what's his name wasn't a great songwriter. I've seen these interviews of George Martin talking about how George wasn't a great songwriter when it first started, but then he became a great songwriter, one of the best at the very end, and it shows. And this is his almost his revenge album. I also love the song "Isn't It a Pity?" That's a good song. It's kind of a couple of those songs are kind of they're really kind of not happy songs, but they're really good.
Yep.
So basically, this album, All Things Must Pass, was nominated for Album of the Year. My Sweet Lord was nominated for Record of the Year, but Harrison lost both categories to Carole King and went 6 times platinum. And it's the 33rd best-selling album of the 70s. Wow. So that's pretty good stuff right there.
And he got sued.
Yeah.
For My Sweet Lord.
Yeah. And you know how I feel about that. I'm like, there's so many worse ripoff songs than that one, but kind of set the standard.
I wonder if someone does a mashup of the two songs together, because they definitely got the same melody, but how vast
it's a stretch,
is the difference between the two songs? A total difference.
There are a million other songs that are way worse than that.
Vanilla Ice stealing Queen's bass line and saying one note was different.
We sampled them from him, but it's not the same bass line. He goes ding 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 diggy ding ding, ding 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 diggy ding ding, ding ding ding. That's the way theirs goes. Ours goes ding 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 diggy ding ding, ding 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 ding.
Yeah, no. So the 50th anniversary of this album was 2020, and the mix on that is pretty amazing. They fixed it up a lot. Yeah, so you got to check that out.
Cool.
We already mentioned the Apple Jam disc is kind of.
It's cool as a bonus.
It'd be cool to have it back then, where you're like, oh wow, we get a bonus album.
But wait, there's more.
Right. But I was reading reviews on that too. They're like, okay, you listen to it once, then you're like, all right, yeah, you're not going to listen to it again. So
I think I listened to it once on purpose.
If you find that album, in a used record store or something like that, that third album, probably pristine. No, we're being harsh, but I don't know. So yeah, that was All Things Must Pass. Now, what do you give All Things Must Pass as a grade, John?
Because of the just the Wallace sound, I gave it 8 out of 10 apple scruffs.
Yeah, I gave it a 9 out of 10, and essentially for the same thing, which is weird because we're not exchanging our notes or anything. The kind of like the muddy production and the echo wall of sound that our boy Phil Spector brings to the table.
Yeah,
Like,
they call him Spector because he haunts our dreams because of what he's done to the songs.
Right. Yeah. So, all right. So 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. All right. We're going to move on to John Lennon in his first album, also in 1970. This one was released at the very end of 1970, December 11th, 1970. Another Phil Spector production here. And he did it along with John Lennon. And the key tracks on this one, Mother, God, Working Class Hero. I don't think any of these were big, hits, but very personal album and wildly recognized as his best solo album. But at the time, it was not a hit. And I was reading that John Lennon was thinking about releasing the song Love as the first single, but opted out and went with Mother instead. And I think that's a huge reason why this album wasn't as big as it was, because Love is like a Beatles song, right? It's like almost like a Beatles song.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
And then you hear Mother and you're like, Jesus Christ, is the whole freaking album like this? My God. It's like, so like, Jesus, he's like screaming. He's like, ah! I was like, God, what happened? Like, everyone's like, what happened to John? Jeez. No, but like, I just think that was kind of an odd choice for a single, but that's John Lennon, man. That's John Lennon.
Yep.
Yeah,
he does what he wants.
The album kicks off with Mother, and then it ends with My Mummy's Dead. So yeah, so we got John Lennon solo here, but I was reading also that most of the album was recorded without Spector, actually, and that's probably a good thing because it's it's very kind of like stripped down, right? The songs sound cleaner, and I
feel like it accomplished the lo-fi that Paul was attempting, but successfully nailed it.
Right. Yeah. No, it sounds like a really awesome album because it's like almost like a continuation of the White Album, almost kind of, like that kind of stripped down.
Yeah.
Kind of like that kind of deal. Yeah. Lennon, I guess, was pretty disappointed with the release of this album initially because he thought it was his best work, and it paled in comparison to All Things Must Pass. All Things Must Pass was like a number one album, and John Lennon's album was not, I don't believe. So yeah, I don't know. John, what are your thoughts on that album?
This album is amazing. The emotions put into this album are insane, and it kind of spurred me into like looking into Lennon's past a little more. And that dude suffered some serious trauma. And I believe, wasn't he in like primal scream therapy at this time? And the whole point of that is to just let it out, don't hold it in. So this is basically a primal scream soundtrack of him letting out all the anger and pain he's been holding his whole life.
Right.
And I mean, just because of that, it was so powerful. It is very moving.
It's definitely the most personal Beatles album ever made. Like
yeah,
solo.
dude, he was putting himself out there. He was doing that. He's exposed, but on the other hand, he's got these like painful songs. But on the other hand, there's the songs like Love and God that promote self-love and love for others. Yeah. So it wasn't all like trauma and pain. It was a little bit of both. But I don't know. It was interesting to see the comparison between this and the McCartney Bowl of Cherries album. How it wasn't it called Bowl of Cherries?
No, my dad always used to call it that. He's like, I like that album Bowl of Cherries. I'm like, Dad, it's actually called McCartney. But yeah, I mean,
it's like the White Album, dude.
Bowl of Cherries.
Or it's the color white. It's called the White Album. Is the Beatles the Beatles? What?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. Did you know that Yoko Ono? What did I say? Owner.
Yoko Ono of a Lonely Heart.
Yeah. She released an album with the identical name and almost the exact cover. Could you imagine going out and buying her album on accident, taking it home?
Oh, good.
Oh, man.
No.
And then finding out like 15, 20 years later that it was really this insanely amazing, like, powerful album. Like,
you're like, wait a minute.
Oh God.
That was I bought the other album. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
What are your deep cuts on this album?
Oh, what aren't my deep cuts? I really like the Hold On John song just because my name's John. And it actually, but for real, it soothes me listening to it because it's like, hold on, John.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be all right.
Yeah, it's like a lullaby.
It's like, yeah, it's calming for me because I'm John.
Yeah.
and then the part where he's like, cookie.
Yeah.
You got to love that.
Of course.
It's so good that Ringo sang about it in one of his other songs.
Yeah, right. Cookie. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I like I like the song Isolation. That's kind of a
song. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Or the Julia / Dear Prudence remake, Look at Me. That's a good song too.
Totally, dude.
Yeah. So John, what do you give this album for a grade?
I'm gonna go with 10 out of 10 mothers.
Dang, nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
I like it. Yeah, it's a strong album. It's solid all the way through. And as I found out, a lot of these solo albums were not the case. I think they had to fill more space than they were used to at some point. And so just the fact that it was solid all the way through, I mean, that put it up there really far. And then just the quality of the songs.
Yeah, like Working
right
Class
up there,
Hero.
all the way up. Oh man, yeah, that's a good one too, man.
I had this right at like I was struggling with a 8 or 9. I love this album, but it's kind of like I don't know. Lennon's songs can be they can, like, if you mix them like on like what we did with our Black Album remixes.
Yeah.
I think they'd be stronger, but like the fact that you're like, you have a whole album of, they're all good songs, but like, it's kind of like, oh man, I'm exhausted. Like I'm emotional and like, it's kind of like a downer. Like I don't know what I'm feeling right now, but it's not happy. So
true.
For that, I give it an 8 out of 10, but it could easily be a 9 out of 10 or even a 10 out of 10. It just depends.
No, I totally see
it's so good. It's so strong. I think some of these, these albums are stronger at the very beginning of the end of the Beatles because, they have their Beatle mindset and they have that competition going on and all that good stuff. So yeah, no, it could go anyway. Grading these is also like kind of like, it makes my hands sweat. I'm like,
yeah. That's we're going through these albums. I'm like shocked to see how many times Klaus Vormann is playing with these bands. Like some random dude they met back in Hamburg. Yeah. In the like early 60s.
It's not the same guy that designed the Revolver album cover too. Yeah. He was very
they need to do like a biography on this dude.
Yeah,
just like this random satellite guy that just appears everywhere in the Beatles
tons
history.
Of these guys that were like just completely, incestual.
And Billy Preston.
Yep.
He's like on every one of their albums at least a couple times.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so moving on. Again, we're not going with every single album in a row, but we are going to we're selecting some of these. So it's not like we, missed these, we're like, oh, look at these idiots. They missed out on this album. No, like we selected some of these albums to kind of like go over. Okay. So next up we have McCartney's Ram, which is actually Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney credited to, which came out on May 17th, 1971. And this was Paul's second solo album. And the key tracks on this one are Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey, which is the #1 hit. And this one is interesting because he used a bunch of sessions musicians and was recorded in New York City. And it was another album that was not received well with critics upon its initial release. And I think it's funny because
You're so catty, dude.
You were talking about, it was kind of like Paul versus everybody else at the end of the Beatles, and John Lennon thought, well, Too Many People and Dear Boy were about him. George and Ringo thought Three Leg was an attack on them and Lennon. And according to Paul, Dear Boy was directed at Linda's ex-husband, not John.
Yep.
Lennon hated the album and dismissed his former songwriting partner's efforts as muzak to the ears.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And obviously was angry at the song Too Many People, which we used to listen. Remember, like we found out about that in a book, and then we were like, whoa, that's kind of cool. Like they're attacking each other in these songs and stuff like that. This is before you could really read in depth about like all this stuff, or just YouTube, like, yeah, let's listen to someone talk about this, And Ringo Starr said that, I feel sad about Paul's albums. I don't think there's one good tune on the last one, Ram. He seems to be going strange. And I'm like, wow, it's crazy. Wow. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, John, what are your thoughts on the album Ram by Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney?
It's funny you mentioned how everybody thought it was a dig, and Paul was like, I got my digs out of the way on the other album.
Yeah,
this one, it's not about you guys. Come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, this album is really solid, and I like Linda vocals on there. She can't sing that great, but I don't know how Paul does it, but he can take something that wouldn't normally be good and make it sound pretty good. Like,
right.
I mean, if you listen to her singing in Backseat of My Car, or was it does she sing in Too Many People? I can't remember. But she sings all these backup lyrics.
Yeah.
And yeah, I loved it. And then the yeah, that one. That's probably my favorite. And I don't know, it was so much more well produced and polished to like a McCartney sound than his previous album.
Yeah.
And they were only released a year apart, so it's following like the standard Beatles like massive output.
Right.
Must be like a McCartney thing, because it doesn't quite match the output of the other Beatles after this point. But he has the medleys that he was always shooting for and would get shot down, like Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey, Three Legs. Those songs were all like broken apart and would switch up into like a totally different song in the middle.
Yeah.
And it was a very Beatlesque album, actually.
Oh, definitely.
Like, I could see parts of this album. If it was done as a Beatles album, they would like curb out some of the stuff that I didn't like and make it better. Like, I don't know, John would be like, that sounds like shite. And they would, like some of the parts of Dear Boy kind of get to me, like where it's like a horrible mix where it's a really good song, and all of a sudden it goes into the super loud, and then they go into fata 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 fata.
What are your deep cuts? What are your favorite deep cuts on this album?
I really like Heart of the Country. It's a Beatles Paul song.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, easily, like Mother Nature's Boy. But Monkberry Moon Delight is insane, dude.
That all the time, man.
Yeah, Paul's like, I don't know what he's doing, but I swear he's trying to nuke his vocal cords on that song. It's hilarious.
It's kind of like he's like reverting back to like, why don't we do it in the room? You know, like I like when Paul has like definitely the most voices of all the different Beatles.
Oh, totally.
You know,
he's punishing his piano in that song even.
Yeah.
Like, dude, take a chill pill or something. I don't know if he was angry that day or what. But.
I even like Linda's backup vocals in this, like. Yeah. So grade. What do you give this as a grade for an album?
I am going to go with 10 out of 10 butter pies. Butter pies.
The butter when melts running on a pan.
Oh.
Yeah. I give it a 10 out of 10 as well.
Yeah.
I just think
solid, dude.
I think it's so good. Like, and it flows so well. Like,
totally.
Some of the albums don't flow well. You're like, okay, like you could tell they recorded this like I don't know, like a month later or something like that. This one sounds like very coherent and it mixes really well. And you're
good
right.
Mix all the way
sound
through.
Sounds amazing. Like definitely the best sounding solo Beatles album to this point. And the songs are super strong, and there could have been a lot of singles released from this album.
Yeah, and it's a great mix of Paul styles, like his granny songs.
Yeah,
he's got his rocks, like his old style rock songs.
I love my Paul granny songs.
Heck yeah, dude. Good shit. Then he's got his like more experimental stuff, his medleys. It's got everything.
I like when he plays the little ukulele. Is it ukulele? Ding,
yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, when did he take on the ukulele? But man, he kind of owned that after that point.
Oh,
he's so still about that.
Love Paul. All right, we're gonna move on. So moving on to John Lennon releases Imagine on September 9th, 1971. This one was produced by Lennon, Ono, and Spector. Key tracks on this one are Imagine and Jealous Guy. And this album is kind of it's where he does respond to Paul McCartney. This is like this has got to be like, you know, one of the first in rock and roll where they're talking to each other through albums.
Yeah, it was like the first beef tracks is what I was thinking.
It's so crazy.
Inspired Biggie and Tupac.
Yep. So he responds to Too Many People by Paul with How Do You Sleep? And a lot of the recording of this album was filmed and meant for a documentary, which apparently was scrapped. But I remember seeing this movie when they finished it. I think it was in 1888.
Yeah, Imagine.
Yeah, I saw it with my buddy Brad back in 1988 in the theater. Isn't that crazy?
Wow, that's amazing. I saw it with my cousin at the Ocean in Westport on VHS.
Whoa.
And that seriously was my first step into diving headfirst into the Beatles.
It's great. Like,
it was a good movie, dude.
Yeah, it's awesome. So there's been documentaries since, you know, about everybody pretty much except Paul. Is there any like, I think I saw like a really kind of cheesy one about Wings like online. But I was like, hey, like, you know, how come there hasn't been like a movie or a really good documentary about Paul? Like, come on, Paul. Maybe because he's like still, you know, pumping out music and stuff like that and touring, and
he's just not that interesting. Yeah, that Imagine movie though, it reminds me of like the part where Lennon supposedly gets assassinated, and they have the like Lennon glasses slow-mo falling to the ground.
Like, oh,
dude, that hurt my heart, and I was like, dang, man.
Yeah, jeez,
brutal. Anyways, moving on.
Kid watching this movie. So, what are your thoughts on the music of this album? I mean, I thought this has some strong stuff on it for Lennon. Some strong stuff.
Well, I felt it was a very bipolar album. It wasn't very cohesive. I mean, like Ram, it was solid. This album's like good song, okay, not great song, great song. Yeah, so it was like that. You could take half this album and like super glue it to Mind Games and get a really good album.
What are your key track, or what are your deep cut tracks on this?
I love Oh Yoko. I mean,
such a catchy song.
It's such like it sounds like just this goofy, fun song, but it's really about a guy who loves his partner so much that he thinks about her while he's shaving in the
Yeah,
middle of
it's
a
all
bath.
happy. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
happy. And
It was in a
Oh,
Wes
campy.
Anderson movie, and I like Wes Anderson.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I don't know.
What movie was it used in?
Rushmore.
Yes, Rushmore. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Rushmore also had that great deep track of the faces in it, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
that I knew what I know.
that's
now.
a good song, dude. Ronnie Wood.
Yep.
I was
So good.
surprised like how good he was, like away from the Stones.
Yeah,
I listened
right?
to some of his tunes. I was like, dang, dude, why didn't he
I know.
stay solo?
Well, if you could join the Rolling Stones, I mean, it's kind of a big deal there. It's kind of like
guess,
Joe Walsh was great by himself solo, but he's like, I can join the Eagles, and, he's like the biggest selling album in the 70s, or I can, So,
Yeah, he sold his soul to the devil.
Yeah.
The devil beating Don Henley.
Yeah. So unlike his last album, this one was huge. It was number one in both the US and the UK. George Harrison, who is seen in the movie, plays guitar on several of the tracks.
Oh yeah.
I loved the song Oh Yoko. I also like the song Crippled Inside. That was a good song.
That was
Good
good. Like I listened to it and I don't know what I was thinking, but I swore it was some like slow song that wasn't great. And I listened to it and it's hilarious. It's like an old like Western, like it's like a rockabilly or not rockabilly, but boogie woogie.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's a
It's
great
like
song.
someone about it's all upbeat, but it's about someone being crippled inside.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck yeah, dude.
It's kind of like Help. The song Help. You're like, wow, this is a really fun song. You're
Oh
like,
man,
have you listened to the
totally.
lyrics? It's not
Yeah, that's totally
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, what do you
that's
give this
great.
one as a grade, John?
Man, this is hard. I wanted to give it more, but the lack of great songs on there in between the couple great songs. So I ended up giving it 7.5 out of 10 Yokos.
I like where you're going with this. Yeah, I gave it an 8 out of 10. It's definitely one of his stronger albums. I mean, for sure. But yeah, there are some songs on there. You're like, okay, like there's some, I don't know, there's some okay songs on there, but the strong ones are really strong. Obviously, like you have the Imagine song. I think you were talking about when we were making that Black album, because we were like kind of like putting them in kind of like a cohesive order of some sort. And you're like, I don't even know where to put this. Like, where do you put that song? Like,
and that's my biggest issue with a lot of these solo albums is they'll have one like freaking banger of a song that was like just amazing, and it doesn't fit with the rest of the album. It's like they're like, oh, here, I did this 2 years ago. I'm gonna toss it on this album of totally different stuff, and then put it out as a single, and that's what made the album number one.
Well, sometimes that can work though, because like remember, like if you listen to the White Album's like all over the place too. Like you're like, what? And it's like going up and down and like all over the place. You're like, oh, okay, well, it works, I guess. But that's kind of like what we were talking about with if you mix all these songs together, like you have a weird Paul song, and a funky George song, or
It's basically basing my Black album off the White album because of how all over the place it was and how loose the interpretations was of their like standard, the way they put their albums together.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on to George and Living in a Material World. Or Living in the Material World, or a material? Am I mixing up Madonna? I don't know. So this one came out. It was released May 30th, 1973. And the key tracks on this one are Give Me Love, Peace on Earth. And another hit for Harrison after the first album, All Things Must Pass, and a concert for Bangladesh, which was, I think it was the first, isn't that considered the first rock charity event? Something like that. Probably. And the production sounds a little cleaner than All Things Must Pass, but the songs, are they as strong as All Things Must Pass? John, what are your thoughts on this album?
Well, the songs weren't as strong, but it's a definite progression between Dark Horse and All Things Must Pass, or I guess vice versa, because he's like developing from one to the other. So I was surprised at how good it was for an album I never really gave a chance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he put his career on hold to raise money for this Bangladesh group, and because he wanted to make sure the money was going to the right people, so that all his efforts weren't in vain, and a bunch of greedy assholes took all the money that he raised. And luckily, Harrison was able to kick Spector's ass out of the process this time, because he was so out of control, and I think he was probably sick of it. And I think that saved this album a lot from his influence.
I think doesn't this end like the relationship with Phil Spector and all the Beatles? I think it does.
I don't know. I just got so sick of seeing his name, I quit looking. There's a few beef tracks on this album too, which was kind of funny because, dude, George was this beautiful man, but he had like this wit, and like his tongue was like sharp, dude, and he'd cut you.
No God. Well, he's also known, isn't he? Like he's known as the quiet Beatle, but if you hear from all those guys that knew him, he's also the funny Beatle, which is weird because in interviews he doesn't seem too funny. He seems kind of serious, but behind closed doors, apparently he was pretty funny. He's
kind of the sits back and watches what the hell's going on, and then jumps in and pounces when he needs to. Beatle. I don't think that would be on a t-shirt or anything. Right.
Pounces. What are your deep cuts on this album? Do you have a deep cut that you want to notate?
Deep cut is not a deep cut, because I just love the Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth song, which is, I had a hard time getting into much of the other stuff, and that song is just so good I couldn't ignore it. But so, I mean, George is singing about needing love and peace to cope with his struggles and all that other basic hippie shit that people love.
Yeah.
Those humans that I don't see eye to eye with.
Ugh, humans.
Yeah, damn hippies. But I mean, it starts really quiet, and then it just layers, and it just keeps layering, and it gets like intense. So yeah. I don't know. I really like that, and I had a hard time.
It's definitely the strongest track, which is why
it's kind of lame of me to pick that one, but
yeah, no, I know it's a solid track, and it's clearly the standout, which is good and bad. I mean, like I think that this album is kind of forgettable. Like I've listened to it a couple times, and I'm like, I like some of the songs, they're okay, but there's not like it's not like those other albums where like, oh man, this is so good, I need to listen to it again. I want to hear that again. Yeah. I'd say the deep cut on this one is Don't Let Me Wait Too Long, which was a good song. Mm-hmm. And even me naming it, I'm like, I can't even remember what it is right now. I have to go back and listen to it.
I can't either.
So that's how bad. Like
I listened to this album like 4 times.
Right. So I think that is why I gave it the grade that I did. What did you give this as a grade, John?
5 out of 10 Krishnas.
5 out of 10 Krishnas?
Yeah.
I give it a 6 out of 10 because it's pleasant. It's just not strong. And it's not bad. No, it's not bad. Some of these are bad. Like to me,
it feels like transition to me is what it feels like.
Yeah. The big plus about this one is it sounds a lot better. The sound sounds a lot better. Maybe like the mix or the recording
definitely
sounds better. But that should always go with like a no-brainer if we're going in chronological order, and like it shouldn't get worse. It shouldn't get worse. Okay.
Can you imagine All Things Must Pass cleaner? Like they need to Let It Be naked version of Let It. All Things Must Pass.
Oh my gosh!
Although you said it was remastered recently.
Yeah, I think that there are some some tracks on there that they added on there. So yeah, no, you're right. Remember when we heard the Anthology 3 album and we were like, oh my God, these are so good. Like these, the acoustic songs are so amazing.
Yeah.
We're like, they should have just thrown this on like the White Album or something, or Let It Be or whatever. Yeah, no, I just kind of noticed that the next album that we have is John Lennon's Mind Games, which was released on October 29th, 1973. And it was self-produced by John Lennon. He's like, okay, finally, I'm just screw it. We're not dealing with the Phil Spector thing anymore. Key tracks on this one are Mind Games, and the album was recorded while Lennon was having his difficulties with U.S. immigration, and it was also the beginning of his 18th-month separation from Yoko Ono, which is known as, what do they call that? The
Lost Weekend.
The Lost Weekend. The Lost Weekend. The Lost
years.
So, you know what? I just put my foot in my mouth because remember I was saying the sounds should get better, but why does Lennon have such poorly recorded albums? Like this, that's one thing that I noticed about his albums. Like they sound like shit. Like the recordings they don't sound good. Even when they're like, this is the newly remastered album. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, okay, so this should sound a lot better. I'm like, it doesn't. It doesn't sound like
no.
It doesn't sound better.
It's because the recordings were shit to begin with because he was off the frickin' rails at the time. Like his crew that he hung out with in like, what was it, LA or wherever?
Oh God, yeah. The
Nilsson and
all
them dudes.
And,
oh
all
my
those,
gosh.
What do they call those things? Yeah, the Hollywood vampires, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, all the drunks.
So what I take from this era is that if there's a few songs that are good on his albums, I'm impressed because of how off the rails he was.
Yeah, no, that's not a bad assessment, actually. that's actually pretty good. Yeah. Apparently, he wrote all the songs for this album in just 1 week. And to me, it kind of sounds like...
Yeah. Yeah.
The single Mind Games is a good single.
It carries the album.
Yeah. Some of the other songs are just not that strong. John Lando of Rolling Stone magazine agreed, stating that the songs on Mind Games were, in quotes, his worst writing yet. And do you have a deep cut, John, for this album? I have a deep cut. I do have a deep cut.
I have a feeling it's going to be the same, but this song blew my mind, and I was so excited to find something new I haven't heard. It reminds me when I was first buying all these Beatles albums with songs I never heard on them. But the Bring On the Lucy, Free to People song.
Oh, okay.
Dude,
okay.
I love that song.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of mad that I didn't hear it until now, but I'm also kind of glad because now I'm getting like new stuff again.
It's like new music you're discovering.
Like this great like background vocals. Yeah, it's a great song.
Yeah. It's a good song. I like I did like One Day at a Time.
Yes, we're different.
Yep. So I had that as my deep cut. What did you give this album as a grade, John?
3 out of 10 Fridas. It wasn't a good album.
That is so great. Oh God, that is awesome. I gave it a 5 out of 10. So we're kind of like in the same kind of vicinity.
Yeah.
You know, it's definitely our lowest grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a little bit more generous, I guess.
That's what I was saying earlier. If it was paired with Imagine, it would have been a banger, dude.
Oh yeah. It was paired with an album 2 years prior.
Yeah, it would have had at least 6 out of 10 good songs.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next album on the list is by Ringo Starr. Now, Ringo, which was the name of the album, right here, right there.
Yes.
Watching. This album came out on November 2nd, 1973, and the album includes every single member of the Beatles.
Yeah.
But they were not together all in person. This was his first solo rock album. His first album was a collection of standards, and then his next album was country and western. So he's like, I don't know, he's just kind of like, he's being Ringo. He's just, he definitely came off as the cool one in the documentary, right? Everyone's like, man, I fucking love Ringo, man. He's awesome. He's just all chilling, he's like the cool one,
Chilling, goofing off, smoking pot.
Yeah, which makes sense because like he's like, look, I don't want to make a rock album now, so anybody want to help out? And everyone's just like, he just gathers all these like massive amounts of musicians to help him out and like make this this really good album. And the key tracks on this one are Photograph and You're 16, and another single off this album was Oh My My. And this record has some fantastic songs on it. I love that Paul McCartney is credited with playing the kazoo.
Really?
Kazoo solo on
geez.
You're 16.
He probably nailed it better than everyone that ever played the kazoo. That bastard
solo. Oh, it's so great. And then I heard Ringo say in an interview that he does not play that song anymore. You're 16.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
I wonder why.
I don't mind. He's like, because I have like grandchildren that are younger than that, or older than this now. And he goes, it's just kind of creepy. So he leaves that out of his live sets now. Like, how old is he? Like 81?
Oh, I don't know, dude. He's like ageless.
Yeah. But he's still, he looks the youngest. Well, yeah. Of the two Beatles.
What's weird is I sang that You're 16 song once, and about 30 seconds into that song, my brain started to reject what was happening, and I realized what I was singing, because I was in my late 20s. And I'm like, dude, I'm about to sing something about a 16-year-old girl. I don't like this.
Modify it. You could just change it to 18. You're 18. You're beautiful. I don't mind. But even that's kind of like creepy. Well, especially now, you're like, no, I'm not picking up on your. And why is your daughter in here? We're at a karaoke bar.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on this album, Ringo?
It's basically Ringo's greatest hits album.
Right. It really
when
is.
When I bought it, I thought it was his greatest hits.
Yeah, I remember when you bought it, and we were like, "Damn, this is freaking amazing."
Yeah.
This is not his greatest hits.
I know.
Because I think that you bought it when it had that when they included the bonus songs on it as well, so it made it even better. And it was already strong. It's already a strong album, but on the compact disc they have the B side of "It Don't Come Easy," which is early 1970, which is so good. Yeah, it's such a good song, and they include that on there. Yeah, and really so if you haven't heard that song, definitely check that out. It's awesome. He's like talking about basically the band in early 1970. Live in a farm, got plenty of farm, beep, beep, whatever. I can't remember. But plenty of sheep, or I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, I love that song, dude. It was like an Easter egg.
That's the cookie one, right? Cookie!
Yeah, early 1970. It's like a Easter egg about all the other Beatles.
Yeah.
He's basically singing like cryptic stuff about the other Beatles, and it's just touching, dude.
Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah.
It was basically like a reforming of the Beatles, like you said, and but Klaus replaced Paul on some of the songs because they had like Lennon, Ringo, George, and then Klaus, and but Paul wasn't dead because he wasn't able to come because he was kicked out of the US because drugs are bad.
Yeah. You know what's funny is like Paul helped him with a song on I think they all helped him with the song, right?
Yeah.
I think George's contribution was the biggest.
Was it Photograph?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Paul's song was really good too.
Yeah, and the Lennon one, that one's really good. That's like I'm the Greatest.
Yep.
That is my deep cut.
Me too.
And it's so good. But I think Paul's like song is like one of the worst songs on like it's okay. Yeah.
I just don't like the tone of it.
I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe it's Paul's like, I'm not giving you my good shit. Fuck that.
Well, why would you?
Right? It's like, yeah, I'm gonna give this to Ringo. Like I mean, we used to give, like Yellow Submarine to Ringo, I like Yellow Submarine, but I don't have any children's songs in my head right now.
Yeah, my favorite was I'm the Greatest. Lennon was singing backups. George was on leads. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's great.
I had this old bootleg that somebody gave me a while back, and it had like all these like Lennon, just tons of like Lennon outtakes of that song.
Oh,
and
really?
It was like, yeah, it was crazy because he's like doing the whole thing and like over and over and over. And I'm like, whoa. So basically he's just like, just do exactly what I did. And just,
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm only 32 and all I want to do is boogaloo.
Exactly. So what do you give this album as a grade?
I came up with 7 out of 10 creepy guy singing about 16-year-old girls.
So that actually affected the grade.
No, it was a great album, but it was still a Ringo album.
Yeah.
The songs in between were not so great.
Like we've mentioned, you got, you know, he's like, it's still Ringo. He's like still singing like, I got,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, okay, you know, he could only do so much. So like if you had those songs in between Paul McCartney or John Lennon songs, oh, now it's a different story, right?
Yep.
So
it's like a palate cleanser.
yeah, right. Yeah. So I had it at an 8 out of 10, but I could easily have made it a 7 out of 10. It could have easily been a 7 out of 10 for me. All right, moving on. McCartney, Paul McCartney, and this is Wings. Paul McCartney and Wings, Band on the Run from December 5th, 1973. This one was self-produced by Paul McCartney, and several of the tracks were recorded in Nigeria.
What?
Nigeria. And
why?
So this is weird. So I think that like they wanted to, I think they went down there and then wanted to like record it in like a new area, and it's kind of like, you know, it's all kind of tropical, kind of like AC/DC was like in the Bahamas, which is weird, by the way. Like
Nigeria
AC/DC,
is
like,
definitely tropical.
So
or more.
So this is by far Paul McCartney's most successful post Beatles album, and this is the one with Wings, but 2 members quit right before recording this.
Yeah.
And you're probably thinking, I ain't fucking going to Nigeria. Have fun, guys. Yeah. So they're down there. So there was left to 3 people. It was Paul, Linda, and Danny Lane. And the key tracks on this one are Band on the Run, Jet. And this is also that famous story. I don't know if you've heard this. You could have. I don't know. But there's a famous story where Paul and Linda were leaving the studio late one night and were robbed at gunpoint.
No.
And
I haven't heard this.
Check this out. The assailants made away with all of their valuables, including a bag with a notebook of Paul's handwritten lyrics and songs, as well as cassettes containing demos for the songs that they were going to be recording. So Paul had to sit there and he had to try to remember the songs that he had written down and recorded and stuff like that. Luckily, he did, because the result was Band on the Run. So, yikes.
Can you expect from a guy who goes to sleep and wakes up with the full song in his head?
It's crazy, when he wakes right? Up? Yeah. So the song Jet was named after one of McCartney's Labrador puppies.
God, that just ruined it for me a little bit. Like Martha, my dear, it's about his damn dog. Why does he got to ruin shit with his dogs? Why does he got to say that? He could just keep it to himself. I want to think it's about something greater than a dog. Why don't I just sing an epic song about my duck?
Hey, if you could write a song that good, you should. You please do it. Please.
I just won't tell people it's about my duck.
No. Yes.
Yeah. Make people think it's something, give them like inspiration to make it through the day.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyways, yeah.
It ruined it. That's so great. Yeah, I didn't know what that song was about. I was like, Jet. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I didn't find that out until like looking up all these songs and
yeah, exactly. So
like, gosh dang it.
So the album's cover features Paul, Linda, and Denny, along with 5 English entertainers, authors, and singers, and the American actor James Coburn in the middle.
Oh. And
the deep cuts on this album. John, what are your deep cuts for this album?
Mrs. Vanderbilt.
You know, I used to like rock that song a lot.
Yeah.
I love that song. Oh, hey, oh.
Yeah, the ho, hey, ho makes it.
Okay.
Except, and then it gets into that weird saxophone part that there's something about that 70s, 80s saxophone. It sounds like, sounds like they like dipped it in honey before they blew on it. I don't know what it is. But yeah, that song's pretty awesome for a deep cut. Yeah.
No, I agree. There's a lot of and calling these deep cuts is like kind of weird because like all these are played a lot still.
Yeah.
And Bluebird and You know what song really stands out for me in this one is the one that he does with Denny Lane, No Words. And we used to listen to this because we used to make a lot of mixed tapes, and we used to throw this on there, and you could mix it along with that ELO song. It sounds like ELO. Like, it's weird. So after
like listening to all these like albums like in quick succession, it's a hard word to say. But anyways, just seeing like some of Denny Lane coming out as they progressed through Wings, that was cool. It was like, oh, it's just not Paul. Yeah, he's actually letting other people like.
Yeah, that guy was legit too, man. He was from. He's saying that Go Now from Moody Blues, and he has some good songs with Wings too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, what do you give this album as a score on your scoreboard list?
Well, only because it kind of blew its load like super early, like just the hits. It like a few albums could start out this epic and then I wouldn't say suck by the end, but compared to the beginning, it's like two different albums from beginning to end. But like once Mrs. Vanderbilt is over, it's like it like totally drops off the cliff. But I mean, the second half of the album is like watching like the long credits at the end of the movie, hoping there's going to be like a post-credit scene, like you're watching a Marvel movie or something. But then there isn't one. But it was still good. Like the second half was still good, but because of the first half was so epic, I don't know if they should have like mixed some of that into the second half of the album. But dang, dude, it's like the first half is greatest hits. Second half is just like, I don't know, B-sides or something.
Well, and Paul, I think we were talking about this too. Paul, remember, like he always like and they did this with the Beatles too, where like they're like, nope, we released that as a single. We don't want to put that on the album. Like you can make the album even better. Like other bands do that. Like they take a single and throw it on the album. Like
there's so many songs that I was expecting to see on these albums and they weren't there. And I was like, oh, it was a single. Oh,
you're right. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
God, it's so prolific.
Okay.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I gave it 9.5 out of 10 Mamumias.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Bluebird.
No, Bluebird was too easy, dude. Bluebird's Blackbird. So
you said, what'd you say, 9.5?
Yeah. I was like having a hard time, dude.
Yeah.
It's such a good album.
Yeah, no. Okay. So everybody knows this album. They used to play this album, like literally the whole thing through on like classic rock radio all the time, just nonstop. So that was kind of like why I was like, I don't want to like, I think that album's kind of like, but the fact that it's played a lot, it doesn't take away from how good it is. It's a good album. So like I went back and listened to it. I'm like, damn, these songs are just, I mean, you compare it to like that last Lennon album. Holy shit. Like, I mean, you want to talk about the weak second half of that album? Compare that to the strong part of the Lennon album, right? And it's just like, it's no comparison. The song quality sounds so good. The recording sound as fresh as ever. The songs are so strong. It's amazing. I think this album it's as good as it was graded back in the day, and it still holds up. It's 10 out of 10. It's a fantastic album.
It is. And
the only reason I would have ever graded it down is just because it's so overplayed. But that doesn't take away from how good of an album it is. Yeah. It just doesn't. So, all right, moving on. We're going to go to John Lennon. This is his album called Walls and Bridges from 1974. This was actually released on September 26th, 1974. Also was produced by Lennon solo here. And it was released during his infamous Lost Weekend that... When did this thing start? It was like a year and a half. I don't know.
It was like almost 2 years.
So 18 months, right? So this was to be Lennon's last album of original music that was released in the 1970s.
Wow.
Key tracks on this one include Whatever Gets You Through the Night, which was a song that he did with Elton.
Yep.
And that was his, this is weird. This was his first #1 hit as a solo artist. Isn't that weird? You're like, wait a minute, what about Imagine? Like, no, it hit like #3. Like,
No way.
isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
You just automatically think, because you're like, oh, Imagine's his biggest hit. Like, that's a song he's probably most known for now. And Dream #9. But yeah, so this is that album where Jimmy Iovine was the young engineer on this album. And I don't know if you've seen that documentary on HBO where it's like him and Dr. Dre, and they kind of like go through their entire career, and then they finally meet up, and it's like super cool. I don't know if you saw that, but good documentary.
I can't afford that HBO subscription, dude.
Well, I use my parents' account, so there you go.
What is the password?
Yeah, you want it? So now Lennon actually thought that the songs "Bless You" and "Dream #9" were his best pieces of work on the album. What are your thoughts on the album, John?
So yeah, definitely #9 Dream was like, it was weird because that song was buried like at track #7, and it's like an assload better than the rest of the tracks. It doesn't really fit on the album though. So it's like,
right.
It's weird. Like, it was just like Imagine on the album Imagine. It didn't fit, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
I love that song.
Mm-hmm.
And it was still during the Lost Weekend era, so I'm still surprised he showed up and was able to make good tracks during that time. I feel like Elton John and Lennon should have formed a super group called Elton John Lennon.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was really cool. I mean, like, he was like getting together with these other amazing artists. Like, he did Fame with Bowie, but that was, later on. But I feel like having that other artists with him, like, pushed him into greatness more, and like
Lennon needs that.
Yeah. He put him into focus instead of just being angry, drunk, or, whatever, that on heroin, or
I think
just showing up and making music.
Yeah. No, I
kept him on track.
Yeah, you're right. And again, by the way, another album where it doesn't sound as good as it can sound, like the recording, right? Mm-hmm. Sorry, Jimmy Iovine, but
wasn't his fault.
Yeah, well, he's the engineer.
Uh-huh.
So no, but it sounds a little bit better. I think his best sounding album is clearly his last album. But deep cut. Do you have a deep cut that you have on this album?
Old Dirt Road was kind of fun. His his collaboration with Nilsson.
Yeah, I loved. Yeah, that's a good song.
Nilsson reminds me of like Randy Newman. He's got these like fun songs, and
yes, that's a great example. I bring that up actually.
Yeah,
I bring up. That's actually the exact like example that I bring up. You're like, everybody knows Nilsson songs.
Yeah,
but nobody knows who the hell Nilsson is.
Yeah,
so it's weird. Because everybody knows Randy Newman songs, but
although he kind of drug Lennon down into a hole with his Hollywood Vampires or whatever that was. But yeah, it was
the drinkers, man. Yeah,
Nilsson.
Well, he got it out of
fun,
the system.
Dude.
It took 18 months, but he got it out of the system.
Yeah.
No, but I think that I think he's one of those people that needed to have a kid to like settle him down.
Yeah.
And boy, we're talking, he settled down. He like just disappeared for like 5 years.
Oh my gosh. It was insane, dude.
Yeah. And then he got like a producer that can actually, help him, sound good. And, put
he
those
just
songs
needed like direction and maybe boundaries or something, but
yeah,
because he was off the chain. He didn't have Paul to wrangle him in anymore.
Right. Yeah, he definitely needs that supervision or that, guy pushing him.
Exactly.
So my deep cut on this album was What You Got, which is a super funky, like, I was like, when I heard that for the first time, I don't know where I heard this for the first time. It was like years ago. And I was like, what the heck is it? I think someone was playing like a deep cut of Lennon, like on the radio or something like that. I was like, that sounds like John Lennon, but that can't be John Lennon. Because it's all like, and I'm like, what is this? This is crazy. So I like that one.
Yeah, there's some serious like cool funk deep cuts on these albums, and I don't know if it's because of having Billy Preston on there and like his satellite people that he brings on, because he was funk. He was there's some musicians that are on these albums that are like played with Shaka Khan and all these like sweet ass funk groups.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, dude, this is a totally different sound, but I dig it.
I did like the song "Nobody Loves You When You're Down and Out." That's a good song. Mm-hmm. Another super personal Lennon song, and the instrumental song "Beef Jerky." It's a pretty good one.
I do like beef jerky because
I love
it tastes good.
Yeah, me too. I love that he used the McCartney riff from "Let Me Roll It" in that song. I don't know if
really?
He's like, and I'm like, whoa.
I didn't know it.
Because like I guess Paul McCartney, when he wrote that song, he wrote that to be kind of like a John Lennon like song. He like sang it like John Lennon.
I could see it. Yeah,
he did that
for sure.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like a Lennon-esque song. So, yeah,
I did notice that there was. Man, I don't know if they were just like missing their conspirators or what, but there was plenty of times where it sounded like they were trying to make a song that was a Lennon song and it was McCartney or vice versa. And it was kind of sad, but it was also kind of cool that they were trying to spread their wings and try and get into that sound that the other person got.
Yeah,
or they should have just not broke up. That would have been better.
You know, during the this is like one of the famous stories during the recording of "Whatever Gets You Through the Night." Elton famously said he bet John Lennon if that song, you know, he predicted that would hit the top of the charts, and Lennon's like, bullshit, this ain't hitting the top of the charts. He's like, if it hits the top of the charts, then I will go out and I will sing with you on stage. Well, hit number one. So Lennon, I don't know if this was Lennon's last live appearance. I think it might be, where he went out on with Elton in Madison Square Garden. Yeah, on November 28th. Mm-hmm. Performed "Whatever Gets You Through the Night." I saw her standing there and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. So what do you give this as a grade of an album here?
So I did like the song "Beef Jerky" just because it's a cool name, but I only gave it a 4 out of 10 poussé poussas. Abawamgawas.
Oh my god! What does that stand for? Do you know? I
should have looked it up, but I didn't. Yeah. I just accepted it for what it was, and just let it take over my heart. That song was like, I love that song, and it was like, where did this come from on this album? It's buried in the middle, and then it goes to the next song. And you're like, okay, I guess we're back here again.
I gave it a little bit stronger of a rating. I gave it a 7 out of 10 because there are songs on there that I do like. Mm-hmm. It's definitely not his first couple albums, but there's some songs on there that are pretty decent. Certainly better than what's it called for me?
Mind Games.
Yeah, Mind Games. Yeah, there you go. Mind Games. So all right, we're gonna move on. The next up is Ringo Starr with "Goodnight Vienna" from 1974. This was released November 15th, 1974, produced by Richard Perry, and with the use of many of the musicians from the last album. And the key tracks on this one are the No song and Only You.
That No song.
So
Ringo.
Exactly. So Lennon wrote the title track "Goodnight Vienna." Mm-hmm. And he also suggested that Ringo do a cover of "Only You" by the Platters. Mm-hmm. And I think the best thing about this record was the album's cover art.
The robot.
Yeah, he's like coming out of a spaceship or something.
Robot.
So what are your thoughts on this album, John?
I'm going to go the other way, and I thought it was a pretty solid album for Ringo. Like asterisk for Ringo. I mean, it was a typical lighthearted boogie woogie funk stylings.
Yeah.
that Ringo was producing during these years. But I was looking into some of the musicians who contributed it, and I was kind of like surprised. I guess I should have been surprised that it wasn't better because of these these musicians were amazing. But it had like Billy Preston, of course, Lennon, of course, but then there was like Harry Nilsson, Dr. John, and Elton John and Bernie Taupin song. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, wow, that's cool.
I love Dr. John, by the way.
Yeah, he's pretty sweet, dude.
So awesome.
But yeah, the songs on this album, acapella, Snookaroo. I don't know if I just like the name Snookaroo or if the song's actually good, but that's the one by Elton and Taupin. And
were Snooki's parents fans of Ringo Starr? Like
yeah, I'm sure they are. I think that was on an outtake of Jersey Shore.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. So the No song's just fun.
Yeah.
Only You. Yeah, that was decent. But that, man, I hate to say it, but if someone with better vocal abilities than Ringo sang these songs, this album would have been that's a lot better. I mean, I love Ringo, but his singing is not his forte. But I'm just glad that he's able to do it, I guess.
Right.
Kind of like that.
Only you.
Yeah.
He's not known for his great vocal abilities.
He's not William Hung, but I mean, I'd say he's right up there with Linda McCartney.
William Hung. Well,
he's having fun and he's making money. I mean, when he's not doing Thomas the Tank and Engine shows, he's singing songs.
Yeah, I had did you have a deep cut on this, or you're naming a bunch of songs? So maybe those are your deep cuts.
Yeah, one of those. No, I like the No song just because it's funny and it was a decent song. We didn't want to do drugs because they make him sneeze and there was some minor inconvenience, not because it was ruining his life.
No, I don't. No more.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like the worst Dare commercial ever.
Right.
Say no to drugs. He's like, don't do it because it'll make you sneeze or it'll make you sleepy.
In the studio, he's like the rolling joints and smoking. Yeah.
But the funniest part was some lady had a 10-pound bag of coke in this song.
Wow. That's great. That's like Cheech and Chong shit right there, man.
That's getting the U.S. Navy involved. Amount of weight of coke.
I don't know if you remember the song "All by Myself," not the Green Day.
All by myself. Oh, okay.
But there's a deep voice and a female backing vocals in this song, and that's my deep cut. And I was like, listen to this, going, what? Of course, I had to pick a song where the backup vocals make the song great.
Who's this person? I was looking at the track list, and it's Poncia is the name of I don't know if it's the background singer, but that's the other person credited to the song.
Oh, okay. There you go. Poncia. Yeah, I don't know.
There you go.
I learn something every day.
Might not even been that person, but
right.
Poncia. Anybody? Poncia?
What do you give this one as a grade, John? If you had to give it a grade.
7.5 out of 10 marijuanas because I'm doing Ringo stats here. And it was damn good for a Ringo album. Just because, I would say, how many of the Ringo albums weren't included on this list?
Well, man.
7?
Do you want me to put you through those? You want to listen to some of those albums?
No, dude, I'm good. Yeah.
I gave this one a 5 out of 10. It's all right. To me, again, it's kind of like going back to the George Harrison album. We're like, it's all right. It's like a decent listen, but I literally already forgot all the songs. I know the No song, and I know the cover song, and and I remember that one song had backing vocals, but I can't remember how the song goes. So
I think I had to give it more of what I thought it should be, just because it was the only other Ringo album on this list.
And you're actually doing the whole Well, for Ringo, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, if you're comparing it to Band on the Run, is that really is that really a one step lower than? All right, okay. So, okay, all right, we're gonna move on here. So, number 12 on the list, George Harrison releases Dark Horse on December 9th, 1974. This was produced by George Harrison, and almost all the tracks are sole Harrison compositions. Key tracks on this one include Dark Horse and the Christmassy Ding Dong Ding Dong. And it peaked at number 4 on the US Billboard charts, but it was not received well by critics. It also became Harrison's first post-Beatles solo album to not chart in Britain. So, I don't know, you pissed off over there, but it didn't even chart. And the album was accompanied by the first tour by a former Beatle since 1966.
Wow.
It got horrible reviews due to it being paired up with Ravi Shankar on the tour. But he was touring when the album was released. I guess he was like touring up to like when the album like came out. So what are your thoughts on this album, John?
Yeah, the whole thing with people hating on this album is that people with tiny brains were mad at George for touring with his own band and not the Beatles. It's kind of a theme of like the whole solo era.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not the Beatles. I hate it. But people are also mad about Ravi Shankar being part of the tour because he not Beatle. He bad. Me hate funny guitar he play.
Some guy sitting like legs crossed, like sitting
I agree. I wouldn't want to sit
stage.
there listening to a 20-minute sitar solo.
Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of
that.
Harrison's sitar songs.
You guys want to get some more beers at the bar? Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect. I mean, they built in beer breaks. I mean, they should have been happy. But I mean, this album is criminally underrated. And wasn't he was suffering laryngitis during this whole thing. So people were dissing on his like vocals. So he ended up giving more time to Shankar, and they're like, oh, let's go see George Harrison. Oh, here's 20 minutes of Harrison.
Oh.
Here's 2 hours of Shankar and some other band I never heard of.
Oh, God. Oh,
That'd
man.
be brutal.
I can imagine like people being so pissed. Because like, back in the day, there wasn't YouTube. So, and there wasn't MTV either. So basically you're like, okay, well, I'm forking out some money to go get a babysitter. We're going out to see some, the first Beatles. Beatles solo tour here. So I'm excited. Some of those songs, some of the songs sound like really, like his voice sounds pretty clean. But then on some of the songs like Dark Horse, it sounds really raspy. But it almost kind of makes the song kind of sound cool, kind of, right?
Exactly. I was going to say it was his voice, even though the dude was suffering, it sounded good with the songs. I'm like, sorry, George, but I know you're going through pain, but you somehow made it work.
Yeah, McCartney mixes it up. He has like 5 different voices that he uses.
Yeah, at least.
Nobody else really does that. So I guess in the book I Me Mine, George refers to this as the naughty period.
What?
I swear to God, there's a quote.
Sounds creepy.
Because he was drinking so heavily and he reverted back to his old drug days back in the 60s. And there's a lot of shit going on during this time. And his marriage with Patty Boyd was ending.
Oh my God, don't get me started.
I love you. I know you love this topic. So Patty Boyd actually had an affair with Ronnie Wood before hooking up with Eric Clapton. And I think that kind of paints the mindset of Harrison for this one. That song Bye Bye Love, which is the cover of the Everly Brothers. I didn't know that he changed up some lyrics in that song. Did you know that? Did you read about it? So Harrison rewrote that song to address Boyd's eloping with Clapton. And the new lyrics include the lines, "There goes our lady with you know who. I hope she's happy. Old Clapper too."
What?
I'm like, wow.
I guess I haven't listened close enough. Never been a big lyrics dude, but that's crazy, dude.
Yeah, so he literally changed up the lyrics and in that cover song. So I don't know. What are your overall thoughts on this album, and do you have a deep cut?
Well, I mean, this is a perfect time to bring up why me and my good friend, we love George so much, and we always talk about it, and it's like, even in the Beatles time, he's like this super deep dude, but he's still silly. He's quiet, but he's outgoing. He's like super friendly, but he will slice your ego in half if you like, you're a dick or something. I mean, he should have probably sliced up Clapton a little bit. I mean, he wrote a song about his teeth rotting because he ate too much candy.
He still was best friends with him after he killed his wife.
He's he's super spiritual, and he doesn't like push it.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume, but then he'll take you for like 150 mile an hour drive in his like car because he was like super into like Formula One racing.
Right.
And
definitely interesting dude, man.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so I don't know, this album reflected a lot of that like deep Georgeness. I mean, this album was so underrated that when I stumbled on it, when we were at Warehouse Music with the most ridiculous like business policy of letting people open their new albums and listening to them.
Oh God.
And then putting them back.
How much money do you think we cost this?
If it was just us, I'd feel better about it, but I know everybody did it. But yeah, we were in there, and that was kind of the height of our like branching out from the Beatles era.
Yeah.
I came across albums like David Bowie's Man Who Sold the World, which didn't have a hit on it. Yeah. I only knew about it because Nirvana covered Man Who Sold the World.
Right.
That song, that album was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stumbled across this Dark Horse album, and I was like, wow, this is a great album. So I love this album, and I don't know, I feel like it's his peak. This is his solo area. Yeah.
You know what this album reminds me of, John?
Driving to Rick's.
Yes. Oh my God. Holy shit.
That's all I could think of. Because that's when I first got it. I made that tape and I played it every day.
Oh,
we had
God,
like an hour and a half long commute, and I played it over and over and over.
This reminds me of you, me, and Brent Kipling.
He hated that, dude. Like,
poor Brent. Brent's like metal or like Journey, and like he's like a eclectic mix of like harder like rock stuff, like Maiden and stuff like that. And then we're like rocking like George Harrison, like some weird George Harrison that not even the hits, like this strange George Harrison album from the mid '70s. And we're like, and then we're going and to top that off, we're going to dig ditches after we listen to this album. So
I dig dirt, or I dig love became I dig dirt. And the best part was when he started singing along with it after a while. I'm like, give me some gas money and I'll put in a different album.
Funny that you bring that up, John. I swear, because you had that. What was that vehicle that you had? That Chevy.
Oh man, I had it for a short time. It was like
it's kind of cool.
So yeah, dude, it had this iridescent green paint on it. It was like a Bronco.
Windows, and it was like lowered. It was like, I don't even know what it was, but it was like
I felt bad driving that car because it was my dad's girlfriend's car, and he gave it to me because he was punishing her, and I didn't find that out till later.
God. Really? Wow.
I was like, "Ooh, this is awkward," but man, I like this vehicle. It's pretty sweet. And then it died in your driveway at your parents' house. Well, just like your car died in the driveway of my.
Right. Yeah, I think it was everybody's cars died back then. But I think I feel bad because like I'm thinking back to this, and I'm like, I would give you the gas money once in a while, but that thing was a big like truck. It was
a gas guzzler.
That was like not as bad as Sean's, but it was it was fairly bad. But I think that I probably owe you money from. Oh, gas. Luckily, John. Gas was 98 cents back in the day.
Yeah, so $5. I think that should cover it.
So I'll Venmo you after the show. I'll give you some gas money for that. Yeah. So what is your grade on this one? And do you have a deep cut on this one, or did you?
Oh yeah. So Simply Shady, that song, I just love it so much. If you listen to like just the vocals without listening to the words, it's almost like he was at a party and he was drunk or something. I don't know. But just the way he sings, he's got like this, it's almost like he's got his voice is doing like a slide guitar thing. And it's got slide guitar in it too, but I really like that song. And it's closest I'll ever come to liking country music, I think, because he definitely had a country like leaning during this era. And so as far as a rating, I'd give it 8 out of 10 ding dong ding dongs.
Oh, that's awesome.
But Far East, man, I don't know, man. That song is a close second.
I had Far East Man and So Sad on there.
Oh man, there's so many hidden gems on. I was like, it's like the only album, just like Man Who Sold the World. I'd never heard any of those songs by those artists, and I love so many of them. I was like, how could this be? But then I was also like, oh my god, this is awesome.
So okay, I went back and I listened to this because I was excited to go back and listen to this because we listened to it so many times driving around. And I think I liked this album. I always like really thought this album was like a lot better than it was because I loved listening to it driving with you, like driving around everywhere, listening to this album. Like we'd buy these albums, like, you know, back in the day, you'd buy an album and you'd have to spend some money on these albums. So then you just listen to it for a while.
Yeah.
And I went back and I listened to it. I was like, I don't know. Like, it's not as, I loved this album back when I was listening to John, but I didn't like it as much as like, I liked it back in the day. And maybe it was because we just loved working with Rick Koulos and Brent Kipling. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. We had quite the crew there after a while, man. We had like 5 or 6 dudes.
Lee was there.
Lee. He like sprayed himself with the pressure washer.
He's like, I'm gonna wash off my gloves here. I'll wash it, and then he got it like right above his glove, and it like he goes, oh, that looks weird, and then it just started gushing blood. Yeah.
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 Oh, Rick.
Goes, that kind of stings. I'm like, yeah, it's a pressure washer, Lee.
I'm gonna go over here and not look at that.
Yeah. So I gave it. Ooh, I don't even know. I don't even want to tell you now. I don't.
Come on.
All right, I give it a 4 out of 10, but I could bump it up to a 5 out of 10. But
hey, don't do anything on my behalf.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things. Yeah, I think one of the things is like what you were saying before about breaking these albums up into separate. Like, here's a Paul track off of his solo album. I think this would build this album up so much more just to break it up, because it's like it has this sound. It's just kind of the same all the way through. It gets a little monotonous, but the moments and the I don't know, it's just kind of a deep album, yet it's also a little depressing. And sometimes I just can't listen to it because I'm like, man, this is going to make me feel sad. I don't want to listen to it. Yeah,
no, it is like one of those albums kind of like that. You could tell he's going through a bunch of shit. Like I said, that's why I was like pointing all that stuff out where it's like, oh, man, like, yeah, he was going through some stuff, man. All right, so we're going to move on. We're going to go to Paul McCartney. Of course, Paul McCartney's just filled with this thing because this guy's a crazy workhorse, freak of nature. Paul McCartney releases Venus and Mars from 1975. This was released on May 27th, 1975. And it was following the massive success of Band on the Run. It was another Paul production. And recording of this one took place in London, New Orleans, and Los Angeles. So this one includes the #1 hit, Listen to What the Man Said. And there's an interesting fact about this one that I was reading, which during the recording sessions of this album, I guess, you know, word got around, you know, but John Lennon told May Pang during the recording sessions for this album that he wanted to visit Paul during the recording of this. I'm guessing when they were in LA.
Or one of the other places.
Yeah. And he considered writing with him again.
Yep.
And meeting up, but it never happened because he got back with Yoko.
Was this the basis of that? Was it like a documentary? Well, it wasn't a documentary. It was a mockumentary they did. Was it in the early 2000s or the late 90s where it was like a made for TV movie where Paul and John were about to meet up, and they did.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yep. I do remember that.
And then he like, I can't remember, but then like he found out that Yoko was there and he left, and then everything just kind of like didn't happen. They
did meet up like right around this time in New York and almost went on Saturday Night Live. Like
they did actual like jam album, and apparently it was terrible. Yeah, it was. I did not know that they actually did get back together.
Can you imagine like
made music?
If they did that? Can you imagine like how freaked out like the cast and what's the name would have been?
Yeah, would have been insane.
Yeah, so the album reached #1 in the United States, as well as #1 in the UK. Sold 4 million copies worldwide. Yeah, so what do you think about the album Venus and Mars by Wings? McCartney and Wings.
Well, it's okay. It flows decently as some standard Paul songs. Like, he just has so many songs that are the Edwardian, the ballads. Like, You Gave Me the Answer on there is like, it's fine.
It's one of my granny songs.
It's just like, it's like, yeah, that's decent. It's a Paul song.
Yeah.
And then Treat Her Gently, piano ballad. But Listen to What the Man Said, obviously it was buried at track 11, which was wild, but it was pre-released before the album was out, and then it was buried at track 11. Like, I feel like they were starting to be masters of putting a bait on the hook to get people to buy their album or buy their songs, buy that one song, and they buy it, and then they'd have a whole album full of less than great tunes.
I think this is one of those albums too, where like they select kind of like the wrong songs for like a not a lead single, but like the second follow up or something. Like, I can't remember what it was with their second one, like Letting Go or something like that, which is okay. But I love the weirdo like Magneto and Titanium Man. Like, that's like a great song. And then Call Me Back Again, it sounds like a Paul kind of like, hit song.
Yeah.
But, probably my favorite opening to any solo album on our list is the Venus and Mars instrumental leading into Rock Show, which is so killer to me. That is amazing. I think they actually started that. Did they start that on their tours with on the following year on their world tour? I think they might have. But
yeah,
it's so like, I love that. And it's like what's funny is like, Lennon used to always rip on McCartney for doing kind of like, soft granny songs. Yeah. But dude, Paul like rocked harder than anybody post Beatles. So the hardest songs and probably the softest songs as well with his granny music, but he also rocked the hardest too.
He was all over the place, man.
Yeah.
He had toes in pretty much any style, and if he wanted to make a song in this fashion, he would find a way to do it. Without George Martin, he wouldn't find the easy path, and he would go in a weird way sometimes. But he was all over the place, and this is crazy.
So, what do you give this as a grade?
So I didn't rate this one very high. It had good songs, but Listen to What the Man Said. It was funny. It reminded me of South Park. Do you remember South Park, Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh? So when I first heard his theme song, Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh, there's this song where this little Christmas turd comes out of the toilet and he sings this little song, and it sounds just like Listen What the Man Said to Me. And I can't not hear it every time I hear that song.
Oh gosh.
But, yeah, I didn't rate this high. I gave it 2 out of 10.
Oh my god.
Turds.
2 out of 10 turds for Mr. Hanky?
Yeah, for the album.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So
I didn't like this album.
I like this though. I like this because I thought this is definitely this album was clearly strong enough for them to tour on. So I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Birds.
Not turds, but maybe
Christmas poos.
Titanium Man's. I don't know.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that album, the title of that song was so cool. I wanted it to be much more than it was.
Yeah, it's not anything crazy good, but
No.
it's like ooh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. All right, we're moving on.
I have a feeling if I re-listened to it, I'd probably bump it up to a 5 turds.
The beginning of that album, if you listen to it like on record, or if you find like when you listen to like a CD, this is the problem with CDs. So they split up the songs. So like you'll hear the intro and then it'll pause.
Oh yeah.
And then it'll like go into the, I'm like, no. It's supposed to lead into that song.
I hate
like,
that.
Kind of like when I used to listen to, the first time I heard, this is like I'm really taking a detour now, but the album Shout at the Devil by Motley Crue. So when I first heard that song, I had that cool, weird, creepy intro, and then it goes into the song. And then like when they put it on the greatest hits, I'm like, it would just have the song. And I'm like, I can't listen to that song without the intro. I'm sorry. That's like the buildup of that song. It's creepy.
Yeah,
like,
we were kind of punished in our when we grew up with the CD era because of that pause.
Yeah, I hated that pause. Just make it like mix, like I don't know. And then you hear it like on YouTube, and like you hear those like Abbey Road, and it's like, dude, just make the whole Abbey Road mix. Like just mix it all. Nobody's listening to.
Oh, here's an ad about Cialis.
Yeah, nobody's listening to Paul Anthony Pam only.
Yeah,
you're listening to the whole medley. Like just stop. Okay, all right, we're moving on. All right.
Okay.
So George Harrison releases 33 and a third in 1976. This one was released on November 19th, 1976. And this is the first album on his Dark Horse label. And it was produced by George Harrison with assistance by Tom Scott, who I follow on TikTok.
No way.
Tom Scott is like he's awesome, man. He's like one of those famous sessions musicians.
No,
and
he delivered on this album.
Yeah, he's awesome. Key tracks on this album are Crackerbox Palace and this song. And this album is considered to be his return to form. And he did lots of promotion for this record. He did some music videos, radio and TV, and including SNL when he appeared with Paul Simon. And he was also still going through some health issues here.
Yeah. Must have been some bad laryngitis. I always imagine laryngitis being like a couple weeks, but apparently he had it for like years. Because didn't he take like time off? Or maybe it was between this and the next album, but he took like a year and a half off to like fix his voice and to watch race cars.
Yeah, I think, it might have been between this one and the next one. But
yeah, George Harrison album. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. He said he was quoted as saying that I needed the hepatitis to quit drinking. I guess I got hepatitis or something like that.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, okay. And the title for this album, I guess he cleaned up. I mean, I don't know if he cleaned up for good, but he cleaned up
a little bit.
Title for this album was 33 and a third, which reflected his age at the time of recording.
Oh my gosh.
As well as the speed which a vinyl LP plays on a turntable.
Epic.
So, John, what are your overall thoughts on this album?
Well, the fact that we're only at Harrison being 33 years old and doing this much, I don't feel great. I'm thinking these guys are in their 50s now.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, the opening track, "The Woman Don't You Cry for Me," has some epic bass in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some good bass. There's a lot of soul in these later.
I have that as my deep cut.
Yeah. And there's some gems on this album I was pleased to hear for the first time, like Pure Smoky, Beautiful Girl, and Woman Don't You Cry for Me. But I was like listening to the bass on some of these tracks. I was like, damn, that's some funky bass, dude. It's great. And so I went and looked it up, and there's this dude, Willie Weeks. He played the bass, and I was looking up his who he played with, and I was blown away. He played with like people like Greg Allman, David Bowie, Jimmy Buffett, Clapton, the Dickhead, Doobie Brothers, Aretha Franklin, Chaka Khan, David Lee Roth, the Stones, Mellencamp.
Jesus. And
I got tired of writing down names after that point. There was like at least double that.
I love all these like dudes that are like, you know.
I'm like, I never heard of this dude. His bass was, I don't know, it was great. I'm like trying to learn bass right now. And so I particularly listen to bass lines, and I was like, wow, it's pretty sweet shit.
Yeah. Yeah. That first cut really stands out for his bass too. I notated a good cowbell song with It's What You Value. Super classic cowbell song. I'm gonna have to add that to a cowbell playlist one of these days. But no, he sounds better mentally and stronger vocally
definitely
on this record. But like his last album, to me, I don't know. I like the songs. I do like the songs, but it's like that thing where after the album ends, am I humming a specific song? And I wasn't. But what do you give this album, John? Like, what do you give this as a grade?
Well, I didn't like it that much either. Even after all the stuff I said.
Yeah.
To me, it was like classic white people smooth jazz, yacht rock.
I do like that.
Yeah, there's good stuff. I mean, some of the songs sound like Hall & Oates could have easily sung it and made it better. And I would have gave it a better
Daryl
rating.
Hall can sing, the phone book.
But if you look at that song, Pure Smokey.
Yeah.
If Hall & Oates was singing that, it would have been dope, dude. But I mean, I love his voice, but to me it was, I didn't love this album. I gave it 3 out of 10 yuppie scums because of the yacht rock.
I gave it a 6 out of 10. All right.
Oh.
Okay. We're gonna move on. We're gonna go to Paul McCartney, another Paul McCartney, because Lennon's stopped at this point. So we got London Town. This is another Wings album released on March 31st, 1978, and another Paul McCartney production. And this was released after the Wings at the Speed of Sound and the Wings live album, Wings Across America. Key tracks on this one are With a Little Luck, number one hit, another number one hit, just, shoveling out those number one hits. And just like his previous album, Wings at the Speed of Sound, reviews for this album were not very strong. Paul, to me, Paul sounds a little tired on this album, which give him a little slack. He was just on a world tour. So even with his hit song, he sounds a little tired. With a little luck, we can work it out.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Hell, even the album's cover is dreary and cold looking. I mean,
it's
what I mean?
Different, man. It looks like a U2 cover. They got the mullets and everything.
Yeah. So, what do you think of this album? I know that there's one song on this album that definitely really sticks out on this album to me.
Well, to me, it's not a Paul album. It's a Denny Lane album. I like the Denny Lane stuff better than I like the Paul stuff.
Yeah. But
I was definitely surprised by some of the songs. I would say my best song on this album is Girlfriend. Right. And it's just, I don't know, it's so smooth.
It's so weird. Like what's funny, John?
It's different.
I always take that song and I play that for people, even people that know the Beatles and are familiar with the Beatles. And I play that and I go, who's this? And they're like, fucking, I have no idea. And I'm like, that's Paul McCartney. And they're like, what? Paul McCartney? What?
I think I saw this on a Time Life collection from the 70s.
Right. But
it's like in the vocal backups where it's just like they pop in, they're like, yeah, singing. It's like all chill, and all of a sudden they're like powerful backing vocals just pop in, and then that's it, and it's back to smooth again.
I do love that he did write that for Michael Jackson. And,
did he?
He wrote that for Michael Jackson, which sounds like it, right?
Yeah.
And then
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, no. So, but I like how he wrote it for him to put on his album, but then he's like, what? I don't know. It's like kind of like Paul is like just pumping out these like, albums. He's like, well, you're not going to release your album on time, then I'll just fucking release myself. No, I'm just guessing. No, so he put it on his album, and then like, Michael Jackson actually recorded it and put it on Off the Wall. So it's on Off the Wall.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I don't remember that.
Yeah, it came out in 1979,
Wow.
so it came out a year after this one. But yeah,
Man,
so
I'm gonna have to listen to that version. There was definitely quite a few songs that sounded like during the period when Paul was collaborating with Michael Jackson, like the Say time and The Girl Is Mine. But then I was looking at the time frame he did that, and I was like, oh, that was quite a few years later.
Yeah.
I was like expecting it to be around the same time, but yeah. So I don't know if he was just in that sound during that time and just kind of hung out in there for a while.
Yeah. So they did like what? I think 3 kind of collaboration songs, like a Girlfriend, The Man, Say, and The Girl Is Mine. Those are like the 4, I think. Yeah. So I have Famous Groupies and the song Morse Moose and the
I like it just for the name.
Right? I was listening to this and I was like, what is this? It sounds like a more upbeat version of like Gordon Lightfoot and the wreck of the Fitzgerald or what? What was that song? The wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, right?
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? Yeah. So what did you give this album as a grade?
5 out of 10 more smooses. Maybe 6. I'm gonna bump it up to 6.
You know what? I'm at a 6. So we had the same idea for an album or a review on that one. So we both scored that one at a 6. Moving on, here we go. George Harrison from 1979, titled George Harrison. And this one was released on February 29th of 1979. Produced by George Harrison and Russ Titelman, who also produced acts like Randy Newman, Steve Winwood, and Ricky Lee Jones. And the key tracks on this one are Blow Away and Love Comes to Everyone. So unlike his last few albums, this one was reviewed pretty well. It had some songs that definitely got played on the radio more than his last one.
Yeah.
But John, what are your thoughts on the George Harrison 1979 album?
Yeah, this album came at a time right after he took that break from his laryngitis incident that lasted how many years? A decade? I don't know. 2 years is like a decade in Beatle years. But, but he got married to his longtime girlfriend and he had a child, Lovey Donnie.
It does something for these guys, man. You
ever see Donnie, dude? He's like, every once in a while, he's like the spitting image of George. And
every once in a while, he looks just like him.
He looks just like him, but he sometimes sings like him.
I saw him with Jeff Lynne. With the ELO. Yeah, he did he took the vocals for the Traveling Wilbury songs.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah, and he was a big, like I said before, he was a groupie for the 1977 Formula One World Champions.
That's awesome.
Championship. And awesome. I mean, I think because of that whole contentment of his life, these songs had a much more positive vibe than previous albums, which were kind of dreary, like Dark Horse, just kind of drug you through the molasses and depression.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Stevie Winwood had some parts on this album. I hate Stevie Winwood, but I guess that's good that he was on here. No, dude, his synth solos are, oh God, I don't know. I never liked his.
I noticed that you're like, well, I don't know what this instrument is, but I hate it. I hate this instrument.
I finally found out it was like a synth. I don't know. Was he playing a guitar or what? But I'm like, play the actual.
You're like, it was like a trigger. It was like,
it was. Yeah. But and then Not Guilty was on this album, which finally made its appearance from like what, 1969?
Yeah,
not getting on the 68.
Yeah.
But what is crazy is I love the demo he did off of the anthology.
Yes.
Better than this produced. Yeah, because
it was like a totally finished song that they just cut. Like you're like, whoa, holy shit, this is good.
And this was like
And this was okay. This was like it was still cool to like hear it, and it was like a completely different song, but it was still cool. But
it was like a demo of the demo.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Songs like Dark Sweet Lady remind me of a little bit of Dylan, but with Georgia singing on top of it. I'm just happy that he was in a good place during the making of this album. I'm just not too happy on the result of how this happiness led to the music. I mean, it's not a bad album, but
so what do you give this album as a grade?
So
God,
I give it 3 out of 10 Moonlaws.
3 out of 10?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So all right. I was gonna save my.
I was in a bad place, I think, when I listened to it.
I thought this album. I thought he closed out the decade really strong with this album, and I don't know if I had ever even heard this album all the way through for years. It's been a while, and I think this album is like really strong. Like it sounds really good, and I think it could possibly be his second best album. Like, I mean, it's in the running certainly for the 70s, but I thought the songs are catchy. The music is well produced. His singing is really strong. Like
yeah, it's better for sure.
It's super strong. You're like, whoa! Like this sounds like a new George from the last few albums. My goodness. My deep cut on that was included on the Dark Horse kind of like greatest hit. So it was like Here Comes the Moon and like you said,
yeah,
Dark Sweet Lady. That's a super good song. I give it an 8 out of 10. I gave it a really strong grade for George. I'm
hearkening back to back in when we were youngins. You always singing "Blow Away."
Yeah, I love that song. I'm a huge fan of that song.
You are.
Yeah. And I used to always sing the Poor Little Girl one. I think that was like one of the new ones that was off that album.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh, honey boy. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to this album today and I didn't get the time to go over my notes for my ratings, but I would definitely bump it up maybe 1 or 2 points. But when I saw 3, I was like, oh shit.
That's amazing. That's great. No,
okay.
All right. So
it's definitely better than a 3.
We're going to close this out, Johnny.
Let's do it.
Paul McCartney and Wings. Back to the Egg, 1979. So this is released in June, on June 8th, 1979. It's the last album on our list here. Produced by Paul McCartney and Chris Thomas, who's a legendary producer who actually worked with the Beatles back in the White Album days.
Wow.
And Pink Floyd, Elton John, INXS, Sex Pistols, Pretenders, a million more.
Wow.
Anyway, the key tracks on this one are Getting Closer and Arrow Through Me. And this album was slammed by critics, but still managed to go platinum in the United States. So Wings were actually planning a world tour for this album, but that ended in January of 1980 when McCartney was arrested in Japan for possession of marijuana.
Oh no! Oh God!
Police detain McCartney for questioning. Japanese narcotics officers want to know where McCartney allegedly obtained the marijuana and what he intended to do with it in Japan, where narcotics laws are severe. They then plan to turn him over to prosecutors. McCartney was jailed, and the cuisine was not promising. Japanese soybean paste soup and a slice of bread. Customs officers show how McCartney tried to allegedly smuggle marijuana into Japan. It was not hidden very well. If formally charged, he could get 7 years. But there is speculation that Japanese authorities will be content to deport him. His concert tour was canceled, costing promoters nearly $500,000. Jack Russell, NBC News, Tokyo.
And ended up spending 9 days in jail. And I think those were I think I remember reading this, that those are the only days that he ever spent away from Linda.
Wow. Can you imagine the prison songs they sang, though?
Oh, must have been amazing. Yeah. But that officially ended the band Wings. So that was the end of Wings.
Yep.
But John, what are your thoughts on the album Back to the Egg?
I was surprised by the quality of this album just due to what the albums like. I felt like the albums were steadily declining slowly over the years of the 70s.
Yeah.
And then this album came out, and I swear I had the record of this album, but I may not never listen to it just because at a certain point we were just buying albums.
Yeah. I love the album cover.
Yeah, it's cool. And
yeah.
I guess the album was supposed to be like a theme album based on a working band, kind of like Sgt. Pepper was supposed to be based on this group that was, and it kind of just fell apart after 3 songs, but it's still a cool idea, I guess. But one of the biggest things on this album was Rockestra theme, the instrumental.
Yes.
It won a Grammy.
Yeah.
In 1980. But the people that were on that song was like kind of blew my mind.
It's
like
awesome.
David Gilmour, Pete Townsend, John Bonham was on there.
Yeah.
Jeff Beck was supposed to be on there, but Paul booted him because he was being too much of a diva. Keith Moon would have been on it, but he died.
Yeah, I read that too. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Talk about timing. But yeah, it was I thought it was like, really a Grammy for that song? I mean, it was
cool,
good.
fun song, but yeah,
it was cool. And then I went and looked at the other choices today, and I was like, yeah, they deserve to win.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
some of the other songs.
That I think that's up on YouTube. There's like a little they did like a special of them putting that together, and they're
really?
all in like a big room, like recording it and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. That probably played into the role of them winning that. But
yeah, it was definitely better than I expected it to be, which is always a nice way to get into an album thinking it's going to be terrible, and suddenly it's good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just if we just start off with the cover itself, it's like such a cool like cover. You know, they're all like hunched over, looking down below, like at Earth or whatever. It's kind of like
egg.
It reminds me of the. It reminds me of like those, you know, just all the space stuff that was going on in the 70s with like Boston and ELO and Star Wars.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
You know?
All the ELO, like their UFO covers.
Yep.
But one thing that was really cool about this album is it had like a lot of experimental electronic stuff on it, which, I mean, I guess it might not have been experimental at that time, but for like the rest of the Beatles, Paul was definitely dipping his toes into newer technology and sounds, and it ended up being really cool. Like I said, he could take a dead cat and make it sound good. I think it's
what's
just like
what's your deep track on this? What kind of deep cut do you have?
Well, for me, the deep track, and apparently it was what you were saying, it was a popular track, and I never heard it, but Arrow Through Me.
They weren't. I don't think any of these were like huge hits. That was
I never heard
Arrow
Through Me, and
yeah,
this song is on my I got it on my Spotify loved songs playlist.
I love that song.
Now. Yeah. So it's great. I mean, it's got this great intro. It's like this creeping bass. Yeah,
yeah, it's awesome.
So good. Yeah. So that was definitely my favorite song. It's got a lot of soul. Yeah. So
I love the song.
Nice.
You know me, I'm a softie for Paul's really soft songs. Well, the soft songs that are really good, and I love "Baby's Request" is like insanely good. And I'm like, whoa!
I definitely that was up there with me. It takes me back, and it was the only thing that held me off from making this my top song was that Paul decided to use a disgusting horn sound that came from a keyboard rather than the actual horn. I'm like, come on, Paul, you've been using horns since 65, 66.
Oh,
you know good. A few people that can come in and play a horn, just rent them for a day.
That is so great. Get Tom Scott in there.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. No, I really like some of the songs on this album, but like some of the other albums, man, it's just lacking the consistency and the big catchy hit songs that he has on some of the. So you know, like some of the albums are kind of like this, but there's a huge song that is, you know, so catchy that you can't even deny it. You know, like what we were talking about before when we started this show. I think that this album, if you just would save some of these damn songs, like Goodnight Tonight and Daytime, Nighttime Suffering, and put those on this album, it would have been way stronger. It would have been so strong. And it would have been like one of, the better 70s albums, in my opinion. So yeah, I had to dock him for that. And the 1993 release of this album on CD, I think, includes like Wonderful Christmas Time. What do you think of that song, John?
It's one of my favorite Christmas songs. It's a good Christmas song, dude.
Yeah. So what do you give this album as a grade, Johnny?
I'll go with it was just slightly above average. So I'm just gonna stick to 6 out of 10 rockestras.
I gave it 6 out of 10 as well. Okay. All right, man. Let's get into this. You ready to do this? All right. So the time has finally come. It is time for our top 3 rankings. So how we're going to do this is we're going to select our top 3 favorite albums with one runner-up, and we're going to count down to the number 1 selection. So Johnny, what do you have as your number 4 runner-up pick?
Okay, so my alternate is, man, this was tough, as I'm going to say with every choice, but I went with McCartney Band on the Run for my alternate. I mean, it has the most well-known McCartney tracks on this album, but it like I said, after like track 4 or 5, it dramatically drops off in the like. I mean, it's not like the songs after were bad. Right. It's just like it's crazy how good the songs were in the first part.
Picasso in 1985 and
I mean, I love that Picasso's Last Word song, but
Drink to Me.
Yeah, it's a fun little tune. It's got the little jet reprise. But they can't stand side by side. They should have like broke it up into first half, second half or something. I don't know.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know. Okay. I'm not a famous Beatle. I'm just dissing on them.
Okay. Yeah. So, like making these lists, man, I think you and Ethan like this a lot more than I do. It really like messes with my head and it's so stressful to me. It's like the most stressful thing I do all year. And you mentioned this earlier where it's like, hey, look, these interchange. They could be like my favorite album this week could be my top 4 or 5 or 6 even like next week. So that's kind of like where I'm sitting here. So I'm just trying to get my head into this where I can actually make a decision on this. So I think I've decided to, with all that taken into consideration, I think what I'm going to do, John, is this is such a cop out. I'm sorry about this cop out. I'm just gonna pick 2 albums as my top 4.
Well, it's your show, man. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. So I don't do this for all of them. I'm not gonna do like. I'm not.
Well, that's good.
Imagine if I did 2 for like everyone. That'd be such a cop out. So I had Plastic Ono Band as my runner up, which is criminal. I should be like hung at the cross for that.
Yeah, go to jail.
And then this is the shocker. I had George Harrison's 1979 album as my runner-up. So I had those 2 at a tie for my runner-up.
Wow.
Yeah. What do you think of that?
I don't agree.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
I value your opinion and I like you as an individual.
All right, Johnny. So we are down to the top 3. The top 3. What is your number 3 selection for the top solo Beatle albums of the 1970s?
Well, hopping back to my shiny green truck on our drives out to digging dishes, I'm gonna go with Dark Horse. It was the biggest surprise to me out of all the solo albums.
That's awesome.
I hadn't heard a track on it. It was just like kind of, and then when I found out he was suffering laryngitis, I had no clue because it worked well with the songs. It was like kind of a dark album, Dark Horse, album,
Yeah.
right here. But yeah, he's like a little raspy. Ding Dong,
Yeah.
Ding Dong.
Yeah.
The Dark Horse were the
Yep.
known hits, but like I said before, Simply Shady is such a good song, and my top pick for that deep cut thing. I love Far East Man. It's very soulful. It was supposedly about Ravi Shankar, and it was. Oh, here's the part where I was like, it was written along with Ronnie Wood, and he released his own version on his own album, his solo album. And the album was called "I've Got My Own Album to Do."
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because he's in Faces and all that.
Yeah. And so it was basically the same song, but it was missing like the depth and feeling of what George was able to do. So it's kind of cool to see the same song side by side between two different artists,
Right.
to reinforce the reasons why I like this other artist.
You're gonna have to listen to the Girlfriend song, right?
But the sax by Tom Scott on there, that really high pitch alto sax, was great. Billy Preston in the background, dude, that guy. Remember when the new Let It Be Peter Jackson?
Yeah.
He shows up and he just plops down and just kills it, like right off the bat. I'm like, dude,
So
Billy
awesome.
Preston, man, that guy.
He lightened up that entire place, man.
He deserves.
It came
more
alive when he came in there.
He deserves more recognition than he has.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so number 3 on my list. just
Everyone with a deep sigh.
Yeah. Okay. My number 3 is 1970s All Things Must Pass. This album, it's so good. It's really like listening to a Beatles album. If you listen to all these albums, then you go back and listen to that album. It's like, I'm listening to the Beatles. Like, okay, well, and it makes sense because he wrote most of the songs when he's with the Beatles. The songs they're so strong. You could tell he has something to prove. And George just comes out with a triple album, which is crazy. That's so hardcore.
He proved it and succeeded.
Yeah. So it just goes to show you how full his catalog was.
Yeah.
When he released that album. So that's my number 3, which is, again, can't believe that's my number 3. But anyway, that's what it is. It is what it is. All right. So Johnny, we are down to the top 2. What is your second album on our list?
Well, let me just say, All Things Must Pass was on my list earlier today. And then, things slide around. Tomorrow might be back on the list. I don't know. But my number 2 would be McCartney's Ram. So, I called up Paul McCartney and he listened to me, took my advice, went into the studio and polished up all of his songs.
Oh, wow.
So you're welcome. Yeah, I mean, the album was so much cleaner and well produced. We discussed that earlier, but his best work is when he has all these layers, switch ups, and then I feel like when he avoids what he's good at, it doesn't come out as good. Like on McCartney. Like I could see those songs being amazing if he did the McCartney treatment on them, but
or the George Martin treatment.
Oh my God, even better.
Right. Or with John, like giving him suggestions on, stuff. Yeah. There's
exactly. A lot of these albums, it would have been like a dream come true. Just if there's like a computer software that comes out 20, 40, 100 years from now, I hope my kid tells me about it through a seance of what it would have sounded like if it were Beatles on there.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Anyways.
That's awesome. So Ram was your number 2.
Yeah. And then Linda joined in a bunch more on her singing. Right. And she added a lot of fun and this like kind of cute feeling on this album.
Yeah.
She wasn't a great singer, but Paul made it work.
Yeah, it's weird because we were talking about that before. You're like, she's not a great singer. You know she's not a good singer. Even that famous, I don't know. I think I heard it years ago. But they isolated her vocals and we were like, oh God. And
why would you do that?
Yeah, I don't know. But I think just people were after her, kind of like Yoko and stuff like that. But anyway, but yeah, unlike Yoko, she had it worked. You're like, she's not a good singer, but it worked in these songs, and it does come off like I don't know how to explain it. It's just like it's so good. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's just really good.
Yeah, and aside from Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey, this album doesn't have huge hits, but what it did have was a consistent, solid sound. The song pacing was awesome. It was set up like a Beatles album where they would have their setup ways that it was almost like a formula they had. And I mean, the songs were Beatlesque.
Yes.
So obviously I'm going to like that, but had this been a Beatles album, it would have been an instant classic. I mean, I can't imagine how much better it would be. I mean, it's an amazing album to start with, but just to get those little bits I didn't like maybe trimmed off and replaced with something better. That would be my biggest critiques, but this was a very solid album.
It's awesome.
And that's the biggest reason why I chose it, is because how solid it was all the way through.
Yep. I can't argue with you, man. All right. For my number 2 selection, I went with 1973's Band on the Run.
Yes.
I just think that album has it all. It was his biggest hit. It proved to the world that Paul still had the chops.
Those hits were amazing.
I mean, who's this guy? Like, I mean, Band on the Run, as many times as I've heard it, which is 10 trillion times, it's you know what? Band on the Run was my first karaoke song.
Nice. Where's the tapes of that, Lee?
Yeah, well, it's maybe they still have it at the little Chinese restaurant on Main Street in Auburn. Yeah.
Well, mine was Hey Jude, and it was terrible.
Oh, that's an epic song to be standing up there for. You're like, okay.
It was a bad choice.
Like I said before, there's no real weak songs on this album, in my opinion. I think it sounds great nearly 50 years later. Yeah, and totally. It gets played more than any of the other albums on our list. It really does, and. It just has the ultimate staying power of all the records. The most well-known hits. Yep. And listening to this on headphones, over this last week and a half was like crazy, because I'm just so used to hearing it from a lifted white trash truck on the way to wherever with my parents, with the smell of beer and pork rinds in the air. And then you throw on your headphones. And man, I was like blown away again for like the first time listening to those songs. Yeah. And they're great. Jet, the medley, Band on the Run, the medley. I just love those medleys. I can't get enough of them. I wish they did more. Yeah, they're awesome, man. All right, Johnny. Here we are. This is it. We are down to the number 1 slot on our top 3 solo Beatle albums of the 1970s. So, John, who do you have sitting at your top position? So this one is kind of an interesting choice, and I don't think you would expect it, but I went with Ringo Starr, Ringo the Fourth. Oh. Which wasn't an album on the list. You've got to be fucking shitting me. I'm shitting you, dude. That album was so miserable. I couldn't make it past track 1, and it was a disco track, dude. There's a reason why the Ringo album. It was ranked as the worst Beatles album, and it was ranked lower than Ringo's Christmas album. Ooh, yeah, Christmas album, huh? Oh, yeah. Wasn't that like recent, or is that like a actual album back in the day? Well, judging by the album cover, who knows? I don't know. It looked older. I don't know. Or what was your number 1? Okay. So for reals this time. I had to fuck with you there. Oh, God. Okay. So I went purely based on emotion and power alone. I had to go with the Plastic Ono Band by John Lennon. There you go. But had I changed my criteria of how I wanted to do this, it could have been easily Band on the Run or one of my previous picks. Yeah. But
I mean, John's heart and soul shone through on this whole album, and he like was just so exposed, and just emotional suffering results in excellent art, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
that's why you get the whole trope of suffering artists.
Easily, like
Yeah.
I said before, the most personal album on this list here, and that I don't even think that can't be argued.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah,
Paul writes love songs, but it's like anybody could be singing these. John's songs, it's like John singing these songs. There's not many people that are covering these songs like that are doing it as well as coming from John.
Well, it's weird. Paul's songs they're so catchy and they stick with you, and they're like that's why they work so well together. They were able to combine the like two things together, the pop and the soul. And John was just pure soul on this album, and he was hurting, and it was very moving. And so I just decided, well, this is the one that moved me the most, even though Paul's album probably made me boogie a little bit more, or
that's awesome.
Shake my ass or something.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's a great choice, man. Like I said, that could have been. I was struggling so hard with this list, and I was moving them back and forth and all this stuff like that.
This was my number 3 this morning, and now it's my number 1.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's a great album. Great album. Check it out if you haven't heard it. All right, my number 1 for the top solo Beatles albums of the 1970s. Are you ready, John? Are you ready?
I'm dying.
And the winner is Ram from 1971. Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney. Ram. Not only were there no weak songs, in my opinion, which is weird because this album was not well received when it first came out, which is confusing because you hear it now and you're like,
the
what?
petty assholes who were mad at him.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the reason, like, people are still pissed off that the Beatles aren't the Beatles, right? And it's just one of those albums that you and I both discovered, I believe, it's one of those, there's a lot of these records that we kind of heard for the first time because I never heard.
I remember exactly when it was. You remember BMG Music?
Yeah.
They had in the mall, they had a little station where you could bring an album and scan the barcode. And if it was in their system, you could listen to tracks off it. And we listened to that and we bought it. We're like,
that's awesome.
I'm like, yeah, let's get this one.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love
Ram
that.
on, my friend.
That's great. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So, I mean, I just remember thinking back then, we were like, we would be driving around listening to this going, God, this is so good. Like, I can't believe how good this is. And it's like, this wasn't a hit. Like, I'm confused because and the songs are so different. Like, you go from like, I don't know I can't remember the track listing right away, but you go from like, Monkberry Moon Delight to like, Heart of the Country. And it's like, they're so different. It could be like a different like band,
Yeah.
And I don't think that the other guys are capable of that where Paul McCartney is. Especially, of course, Ringo's not capable of that, but
they're a little more one-faceted, and Paul is like a diamond. He's got so many facets that.
Yeah, they're better than we could ever be, but these are the Beatles. So, and it sounds like, like we mentioned before, it sounds the most like the Beatles, which, I mean, that's the reason why we're kind of doing this is because, these are the solo Beatles, right?
Yep.
And I don't know. I love the chances he takes on these songs, and it's just so enjoyable. And some people reference this as the first indie rock album. Have you heard that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So
I was trying to figure out why.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of like how, oh man, who's that guy, the godfather of grunge?
Neil Young?
I was going to say Neil Diamond.
Yeah.
That would be even better.
That would be awesome.
Really? Okay, whatever. But I did hear that, and thought that was pretty cool. Yeah,
it's just, I don't know. I just think that it's just so strong. So
it is.
All right, Johnny. Well, hey, we did it, man. We did it. My brain hurts. My heart hurts because I feel like I offended these guys and I offended everybody watching. But
Same
you know
here.
what? It's what it is, and it could change. It could change tomorrow, but I still think that my number one is probably going to stay Ram, just because of the combination of how much I like the album, because we had never even heard it. I mean, we heard. And when we say we listened to this back in the day, we're talking like, I don't know, how many years is this now? Like
95.
I mean, this is a long time ago, And so, I mean, now lately, I would say the last 15 years, people have really graded this album very differently, now. But like back then, we were like, we'd be listening to this going, I don't understand. Like this album's like huge. It's like amazing. I can't believe it wasn't like ripped on. But yeah, so we got through it. We made it. Now, let's hear what everyone else's opinion on this one is. So we want to hear what your favorite solo Beatle records are that came out in the 1970s. We're talking John Lennon, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, Paul McCartney, with and without wings. And, give us your top 3 selections, and you could throw in a runner-up as well.
Give us your Black Album.
Yeah, exactly. And give us your Black Album, and check out our Black Album lists. And make sure you click on the subscribe button below. Yeah, give us a follow. We like hearing all your ideas and your comments.
I love it.
We're grown men. We could take it. Yeah. So anyway, all right, Johnny. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I think we covered it.
I think you're right. All right, man. Thanks for coming on. These lists are always a ton of work, but they're always a lot of fun.
Yeah, so, I love it, man. It's a blast.
All right, for Big John Rajcich, my name is Josh. And as always, thank you for being a friend.